Yes, app recording in progress. I got to hit the little thing that says got it. Thank you. And okay, we are just at this point not officially started the meeting yet, but for the Landmark Land Use Committee, but we are trying to do a couple of items so we can move things along. One thing that, okay, a couple of things that have come up, I'll do in the chair's report now. We have asked, there's been a request by the board office and a couple of the chair of the board to re-look at the calendaring of the meetings, the scheduled meetings. We've been doing these Wednesday, Mondays for quite a long time. Now we're looking, well, not so much we, but they are looking at, and the board office and the board chairs are looking at having the landmark land use meetings soon at some point, I don't know when, will be on the second Wednesdays of the month. So that's the one that affect us the most. So far, I did send out an email on this, and I've had no problems from the members I've heard. You may also wish to know that the general board meetings would then take place on the third Thursdays of the month, and the executive committees would take place on the first Tuesdays of the month. So the Wednesday, Monday regime that we've had for many years will be kind of scattered around the calendar, so to speak. This is the proposal, as you can see from the listed, there, the little proposal. It's still proposed. It's not set yet. I don't know when it'll actually take place, but it is in development, so to speak. And okay, that's one thing from the chair's report.
Mr. Gordon,
another thing that, yeah.
You have quorum.
I have quorum. Okay. All right. That's it. All right. So we'll do the rest of the chair's report when the chair's report is due. All right. Thank you. Okay. So first, we just have to do we're still officially bureaucratically in September. We just need a couple people to adjourn the September or end off the September meeting. So we have a couple people.
So moved. Yeah.
Adjourn. Okay. Are you able to get the names, Daughtry? Okay, we got it. Okay, thank you. All right, the September meeting has been adjourned. We are now in October, even though the calendar says October 20th. We are now in October. Thank you very much. And let's get started with the BSA hearing. This is the BSA hearing number 2020. In regards to 161 Emerson Place. And this is a matter of the application for the Institute of Community Living to the Board of Standards and Appeals, for section 2722-21 and 73-623, which is, zoning, it's a zoning resolution of the City of New York, required for a variance for a special permit to allow for a modification of the zoning regulation, related to the maximum permitted floor area, maximum number of dwelling units, maximum wall and total height, base height, maximum number of stories, and required rear yard to facilitate the development of a new use group 2, 12 stories and cellar residential building containing 101 units of affordable housing at the property located at 161 Emerson Place, block 1909, lot 1, in Community District 2 in the borough of Brooklyn. Okay, we have presenters David Schankenberg, John Werfer, and Jody Rudin. And I was at least three of them I know of. So take it away.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we're going to start with our new CEO, Jody. So Jody, if you would like to kick us off, thanks.
Well, I
Sure.
just think David Schankenberg showed up also. So, and I'm not ignoring you. And I'm glad to see that you're here also. Thank you.
It's all right.
Yes,
All
Ms.
great.
Rudin, go ahead. Okay.
Good evening, everybody. My name is
All right.
Jody Rudin, and as Nick mentioned, I am the new CEO at ICL. I'm actually in my third week on the job. And I think most of you are familiar with the Institute for Community Living, but very briefly, for those who aren't, we are a 35-year-old human services organization, and we provide a comprehensive range of healthcare services, social services, and housing to about 15,000 people a year. We do this across 100 programs at 40 locations, about 70% of which are in Brooklyn. And I just wanted to say really briefly, it was important to me to join this meeting, even though I'm really early in my tenure at ICL, for two reasons. One, in this brief period, I have become really passionate about the work that we do at the Emerson Davis family residence. And I'm also really excited about our plans to redevelop this site. For those of you who don't know, at 161 Emerson Place, we provide affordable housing with on-site supportive services for parents who are reuniting with their children. And over the course of the last decade, 72% of the participants that we've served have reunited with their children and are living independently in the community. We're really proud of that. The other reason why I wanted to come here personally and meet all of you is because I wanted to convey my gratitude on behalf of all of my colleagues at ICL for all of the support that Community Board 2 has given us across our 4 programs in your catchment area. The Emerson Davis family residence. We also operate a shelter at Tillery Street, an OMH funded community residence called Wallet Residence on State Street. And notably, in January, we are going to be having a ribbon cutting for our newly redeveloped affordable and supportive housing program at 50 Nevin Street. And the reason why this is so noteworthy is because we are in our 35th year of existence, and it all began for us at Nevin Street. That was our first program. So we're really excited to invite you to the ribbon cutting when we reopen in this new and improved way. So with all of that said, it's great to be here. It's nice to see you all and see your faces. And I'm going to turn this over to Nikant Ori, who has been leading this redevelopment project for ICL. Thank you.
Before the next person goes on, I just want to point out that this committee, and I think the board did approve a previous application on this, and just want to clarify for a record, we did approve, in fact, we approved it unanimously. We did approve 161 Emerson Place for the affordable housing. So this is the second up at the bat, so to speak. And we're just, one of the things we're just concerned about is why we're back again on this one. But go ahead, please.
Absolutely, and we're gonna address that very, very specifically. I just wanted to say thank you to Jody for kind of reintroducing ICL to the community board. And I'm going to take a few minutes just to kind of reintroduce, I guess, the project, and then we'll get into some of the specifics of what happened, because I think there's an important aspect to it. So just to piggyback off of what Jody had said, is this is probably one of our most unique programs in the state of New York that ICL runs, a family reunification program. And when we first brought this project to this committee, it was really to help ICL modernize the building, bring the size of the units up to standards and code as it is now instead of the old, as well as expand the number of programming so that we can serve even more people through the Emerson Davis program itself, through the increase in the number of units that were associated with the building itself. We presented what we believe to be a really great project here. We did get unanimous approval for that project. John Wolfling, our architect from Datner, produced a beautiful rendering of the revised building and what it would look like and the context to the environment and the community itself. We also had our BSA application submitted, as well as our first BSA meeting, where they reviewed the project and provided a numerous amount of feedback to us associated with this project. So what I wanted to say was thank you again for the unanimous support that was provided, kind of remind the community board of the programs itself and the expansion. And what I want to do now is kind of pass it along to David Schackenberg to kind of go through what happened. There were a few facts that occurred right after our BSA meeting that changed the project itself. And we wanted to kind of bring the community through of what that happened. So David, if you want to take it from here.
Sure. So hi, everybody. David Schackenberg. I'm the attorney for ICL in this case, and thank you for hosting us a second time. I've been doing this for a while. This is the first time I've come back to a community board after getting a unanimous recommendation of approval. So we really do appreciate your time the first time, and we appreciate your time now. As Nick alluded to, we were here with you folks in December of 2020, a year ago. Time is weird now. Things went well. We went to BSA. We had our first hearing. The BSA likes the project, was very receptive, had a few comments. And one of their comments was go meet with HPD, Housing Development, and just see how they feel about the project. And so we had a meeting with HPD, and HPD looked at the project and said the project's pretty good, but there are some things we need to change. One of those things that we needed to do was we needed to make the units a little bit larger. If you remember, one of the issues with the current units is that they're severely undersized. We were bringing them up to code, and HPD's take is, we can do a little bit better. So the units can be a little bit more comfortable. They can certainly meet all applicable accessibility requirements. And so HPD said, make the building a little bit bigger to make the units a little bit bigger, which is fine. That happens pretty routinely. While we were in review at HPD, the major funding source for our project changed. So this project is funded by a number of sources, including the Empire State Supportive Housing Initiative, which is just referred to as ESHI. ESHI has been around for 5 or 6 years, and their funding criteria haven't changed that entire time. And when we made our application to BSA, we did it under the then current ESHI funding criteria. But while we were at HPD and after we'd been here, after we'd been at BSA, ESHI changed its funding criteria such that there was going to be a 14% reduction in the rental income for this building. 14% is a lot when you're building a building and your goal is to keep the units affordable forever. It doesn't seem like a lot at first blush, but when our whole project is premised on these units are going to be at 60% AMI or below. Tenants won't pay more than 30% of their income, and that's in perpetuity. So all of a sudden, we had a building that needed larger units, and we had significantly less money to build the building. And the solution for that is a little bit counterintuitive. To pay for a building that's become more expensive, you actually need to create more units, because then you can spread the cost of the development over all of the units. And so we, sharpened our pencils and sort of got back to work. And we realized that we could build the building under the old funding stream with 80 units. But in order to build the building with the new funding, we needed 103 units. We actually thought we needed 101, which is why that's on the community board notice. But we've been moving pretty fast, and we now know that we need to build 103 units, which includes a superintendent's unit, to fund the building and keep it affordable forever. And so that's a little bit unusual to come back to a community board and sort of take a second bite at the apple, but we want to be good neighbors. We have the community board approval, but it didn't really feel appropriate to go back to BSA with a community board approval for an 80 unit building when we're in effect building a 103 unit building. And so, BSA didn't send us here. We sort of decided to come back and reintroduce the project to you folks. We hope that you'll continue to support it as you did unanimously before. We think it's still a great building and a great project, but there are some differences. And we're going to go through them in greater detail. But the sort of the bigger differences is that we now have, let's see, 61 units for the Emerson Davis program. We'll have 10 studios, 7 one-bedroom units, and 44 two-bedroom units. Those are permanently affordable units that are going to be for the Emerson Davis Family Reunification Program, which is fantastic. I mean, we're really increasing the good that we're doing there. And we're also going to be able to add 41 units of permanently affordable housing to the general public. That's 20 more units of affordable housing that we're bringing to the table, and we're really excited about it. The general public units, by the way, are 28 studios and 13 one-bedrooms units. So we'd like to show you the new building. We did have to make the building larger in order to accommodate these required units, and that's really why we're here. So unless anyone has any questions right off the bat, what I'd like to do is turn it over to John Wolfing, our project architect, and I'm going to try and share my screen so that everyone can see the building. Does that sound okay? All right, silence is a yes in this case. So I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's see if it works. And then John, are you ready to sort of talk over me?
Yeah. Yes, I'm ready.
Great. Share screen. Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay,
So,
great. Thank you, David. So this is the new design that we are coming to you today about. Some of you may recall from the last time that we met with you that the building had a green open space, or an open space at the north end of the site. That unfortunately is something that we had to forego. It was actually a suggestion from the BSA to expand the building to the north and take up that space. So we have in some ways followed their recommendation in order to enlarge this building. It really has not gotten significantly taller. It's gotten 1 story taller at the south end. But it's the same basic design. I'm sure if you remember from the last time that we met with you, it had this stepping massing, which located the bulk of the building at the corner and then stepped down to the adjacent buildings to the north. As David mentioned earlier in this conversation, in the presentation, the number of units that we've expanded that number of units. You can see those amounts on the left-hand side. And yeah, the improvement to the layouts, the units are going to be handicap accessible, just like they were the last time that we met with you. But it's going to be a vast improvement over the building that's currently there, not only in the quality of life and the quality of space, but also the number of apartments that we can provide. Next. So this is the neighborhood. I mean, we all know this. I won't go through this in detail. Next, yeah. So here's the context. It's at the corner of Emerson and Willoughby. Willoughby is the east-west street, and just to remind everybody of the variety of buildings in this neighborhood. There's low scale and there's some pretty high density buildings, and the neighborhood is also changing along Myrtle Avenue. There's a lot of construction that has occurred. And this, you can see our site in the very middle. I'd also like to point out that the church, which is just to the east of us, just to the right-hand side of our site, that is actually undergoing a construction project right now that we're coordinating our design with. We're making sure that things are, we're not, blocking windows and things like that. But there's a significant building that's just to the east of us that's being built right now. Next. So this is on the right-hand side is the current zoning map. We are an R6 district, which has certain limitations to it, which you can see in the lower left-hand side of this slide. An FAR of 3.0 for residential, and a maximum base height and minimum base height that are relatively low compared to what some of the other buildings that you see in the neighborhood. and a setback above that maximum base height of 10 feet and a maximum building height of 75 feet. And we'll show you how that kind of, how those metrics and those values compare to the current design. Next. So this is our current design. We're still retaining not only the stepping from the south end of the building at the corner of Emerson and Willoughby, but also stepping back the facade and giving some depth and relief along the Emerson Place, which is the street that's parallel to the front of the building and parallel with the basketball court that you see in the foreground. So we're also providing a one-story base. That one-story base, I think, really helps accentuate the stepping that we're doing within the vertical masses. But that requires one of the waivers that we're asking for today, which is the decreased minimum base height. But it's really kind of a non-waiver. I think it just the cohesiveness of the design is I think a primary concern here. So next slide. So this is the massing. This is kind of an aerial view, but gives you a good sense of the building in its context. I mentioned earlier that stepping down from the south to the north, and I think you can really see how that is effective here, making a relationship to the building that's just to the north of us. You can see kind of a ghosted in mass of what that building to the east of us is going to be. So it is, as I mentioned earlier, it's a significant building, and it's being designed as of right. It's allowed to be a 17-story building, and it did not need to go through any sort of discretionary approval process in order to have the mass and the bulk that it's proposing. Next slide. These are ground floor plans and cellar floor plans. The ground floor is at the top, and everything in blue, these colors are a little washed out. Maybe, I hope they're not too hard to see, but everything in blue is basically residential space. We have the supers unit down here. We have a laundry room, fitness space, a lounge for the tenants, and a lot of these spaces are going to they're going to serve kind of double duty. They're going to be there for the residents to be indoor recreation spaces, but they're also going to be there for the Emerson Davis Family Reunification Program to be able to utilize those. All the residents in this building are residents of this building. There is no differentiation between one resident and another type of residence. They really are going to have access to all of these residential amenities to the same degree. The area in pink that you see on the right-hand side, those are very specific spaces for the social services, the counseling, the administration of the program. So this is really intended to be an integrated design where all of the residents can commingle and there's no real difference. In the cellar level, it's primarily utilities, but there is some tenant storage, bike storage rooms, or a bike storage room that we're required to have for the zoning. And then a bunch of utilities. Next page. So these are our typical floor plans. The one on the top is floors 2 through 10, and we have a series of studios, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. The studios are the lightest blue, the middle range blue are the 1 bedrooms, and the darker blue are the 2 bedrooms. So you can see we've got a significant number of 2 bedrooms. In this plan. Those are really intended to be for the family reunification program, when the parent and the child can come back together and have the right kind of relationship and everything is working well. They can cohabitate in these 2 bedrooms. So it's a fantastic program, and I'm so proud to be working on it and working with ICL on this project. The next floor down, which is the setback floor, is again primarily 2 bedrooms, but there's one bedroom at the end. And again, this is how we get that stepping effect in the massing. Next page. So these are the waivers that we are asking for. And David, I'm not sure if you want to go through these or if you want me to go through these.
Sure, I can just sort of go through it quickly because I think the community board's pretty familiar at this point. We need a waiver for the maximum residential FAR that's permitted. We have 3 is permitted as of right. The project that you approved in December of last year had 5.99 FAR, and we're now requesting an increase of BSA to go to 7.7 FAR, 7.71 FAR. Our maximum height has also increased. So we were at a height of 110 feet and 8 inches, I believe. We're now at a maximum height of 119 feet. And of course, that 119 feet is only for the sort of Willoughby Emerson intersection portion of the building, which then steps down to 11 stories and then to 10 stories as you go north on Emerson. That's the sort of stepping down and narrowing effect that the Datners work so hard to provide, that we think helps us with context. We are looking for a waiver for setbacks. The zoning requires a setback at 75 feet of 10 feet. This building has a fairly uniform street wall, at least in the three different iterations of the building. We're asking for a waiver for lot coverage, and that's something that's new. We didn't have a lot coverage waiver in December, and that's because the building sort of only went 2/3 up the zoning lot, north up Emerson. But in response to comments from BSA saying, you know, you've got this sort of private outdoor play space, you could make the building less large by building into that play space and putting living space there. We now have covered 100% of the lot. And so for that northernmost portion of the lot, we need a waiver for lot coverage. We are also asking for waivers for density. Density is a sort of, it's a mathematical equation that's a little bit over my head, but basically what it means is you're allowed to have so many units per so much residential FAR. Because we have more residential FAR than is permitted, we need a waiver for the density that is attendant to that FAR. Although we should note that we are within the appropriate density for a building of 7.7 FAR. We're only asking for the waiver because the 7.71 is not as of right. And those are our waivers. Again, they are the FAR and the height and the lot coverage have increased, or are new waivers. I think we kind of can wrap up with that. This is, we'll sort of stop on this slide. If anyone has any questions, if there are any questions specific to the BSA process of the variance, you know, this is a little bit unusual. We've gone through our findings before, unless anyone really wants to hear my treatise on the Cornell Doctrine for Affordable Housing Development in New York City, which.
No, I don't think so.
Well, David, this is Nick. I just want to, maybe if I can conclude the
Yes.
presentation, I think it's very important. You know, one of the biggest things is, you know, we were surprised at the end of the day that BSHI changed its regulation. We were also surprised that HPD changed their design standards, because obviously Datner, ICL, David, you know, all the representatives really took what we knew at that time to create an amazing program, an amazing building. So we were shocked. We were disappointed, yes, but I think we really took it as an opportunity to make something better and not just something bigger. So, you know, the way we looked at this was going back to the drawing board might not have been the thing that we wanted to do, but at the end of the day, we're creating more units of housing. We're creating more supported housing. We're creating more affordable housing to a community that needs it, to an area for a program that's very successful, as Jody has mentioned, at that 72% of reunification. So we really think this is even a better project than we presented to this community board back in December, I believe David said. So we're kind of reignited and passionate about this project being bigger, being better, but not really disappointed anymore that we had to go back to the drawing board. So I think, you know, that really is an insight that we had to learn as we were kind of going through the redesign, going through the financial model again, to figure out what is the best balance with the units as well as the funding that we have now to work with. So I think it's a very important concept that ICL, Datner, the attorneys, everybody kind of got to, and that's why we felt very important to bring this project, as David mentioned, back to this community board to kind of show that what we're presenting really is even a better project than we presented previously. So I'll stop there and see if anybody has some questions.
Thank you very much, ICL. What at this point we're going to do is, since this is still a hearing for the public, I just will ask, are there members of the public? I guess also I'll ask Tanya, Caroline, are there people who are asking to testify at this hearing on 161 Emerson Place, who are not part of the board?
I don't see anything in the chat as of yet. However, I'd like to say that we've received a letter of support from a community member supporting this project.
I'm Eileen Friedman, and I was asked to speak by Sam Miller on behalf of the Emerson Davis Project.
Okay, you have 2 minutes.
I'm a sister of a person that lived at Emerson Davis for 24 years. Unfortunately, last year she died of COVID, but she reunified with her son, who was 2 years old at the time, and was afforded housing at Emerson Davis and was able to raise her son. He's now 24. I think he testified at the last Zoom hearing. His name is Zachary Kleckner. But because of Emerson Davis, they were able to live there, get social services. She got psychiatric care. Eventually she got cancer and was able to get treatment. And he was able to fully function, go to school, have a life. And now he's building a life where he's self-sufficient, independent, and has an education and will be able to give back. So the thing I love about Emerson Davis is they are there for you for the life of that child and that parent. It's not just a Band-Aid approach. And they need the space in order to provide these services over the life of that person, however long they need it. So I really can't emphasize enough how much they were able to give my nephew and my sister during her life. And now as a young person, he will be able to give back to the community over the course of his life. So
Okay.
that's
Thank you,
why
Ms.
we really
Friedman.
need bigger units. They need bigger units. They need more space. And especially in light of the pandemic, it's more important than ever. That's my 2
Very good.
cents.
Thank you, Ms. Friedman.
Okay.
Yeah, I do recall, and I think most members will recall, we did get a lot of people supporting at the last hearing, previous hearing. Are there any other members of the public on 161 Emerson? If not, then what we'll do now is going to go to committee members, board staff. Actually, I want to turn over first to Daughtry if she wants to. I know you're busy, but taking the minutes, but I know that this was a big interest to you. So I'll start with you at this point, unless you want to pass or go to somebody else.
Oh, thank you. No, I have a few questions, as you might guess. I appreciate the
Yes.
presentation. I respect and recognize ICL as an organization. I think the last time I did say at the last public hearing that I was really in support of the application and what the architect was able to do on the site. I do have some questions regarding the 100% lot coverage and the legal light and air requirement. So I think if you, on your plans, I did see that you are proposing a single loaded corridor, which means the legal light and air comes from the street side, which is, I guess, I answered my own question.
You're correct, yes.
But I did want to ask about recreational space for the residents. That is a little bit of a disappointment to have to lose that yard that was there. So what are you proposing in place of that?
David, could you pull up the ground floor plan?
And John, I could help you with this as well as you do.
Okay.
it, so.
Sure. Actually, while David's doing that, do you want to
Sure.
start? Okay.
So, Daughtry, absolutely. I think we were very excited about the outdoor space and able to keep a piece of that. One of the comments that was actually made by BSA was, again, the usage of that space because of the fact that there was that playground across the street. So while, again, we are disappointed that we lost that space, ICL really worked with John and his team to figure out different ways to create indoor recreation space. So as David's kind of highlighting this, thank you, David. That middle section right there, that indoor play area, that was extremely small last time. We really expanded it. And as probably John can describe better, we're going to really define that to allow for both the Emerson Davis program to use for things like studying, homework, computer, as well as creating separate space for counseling, as well as for the public at large of that building itself. Plus, as all the way to the left corner, we really expanded what we're putting in as like a test or teaching kitchen and a very large lounge, which can also be separated for various multi-purpose uses. So we really tried to maximize that first floor space to create a lot of what we were expecting to do outside and bring it inside. And I'll also add is that the Emerson Davis program specifically really does take advantage of the community and the neighborhood at large when working with the individuals through the supported housing program. So we'll obviously continue to instill that piece as this new building is brought forward.
Can you give a
So-
sense, just quickly, sorry, just to jump in, there's not a graphic scale on here. Can you just give us some overall dimensions? I remember the street's frontage, I believe, is super long. Just trying to get a sense of what the sort of general square footage of those spaces you just mentioned is.
Yeah, so the whole building is, the lot is 212 feet long. And it's, I think, 52 or 53 feet wide at the wide end, and then more like 48 at the narrow end. The total lot area is a little over 10,000 square feet. So the tenant lounge and the teaching kitchen, those are around 1,200 square feet. The fitness room is probably somewhere around 500 or 600 square feet. The indoor play, I can't quite calculate that, visually, but these are really intended to be appropriately sized for a quality housing building of this size. There's a 3.3% ratio, and that's what we're achieving here, is that 3.3%. So I recognize that it is ideal to have outdoor space, but I think we've done a great job, and Nick actually described it very well. There is the playground across the street, but I think we've got all year round space here with this indoor play area, the tenant lounge, the library, which is really meant to be like a homework space as needed. So I think, given the site constraints, as an architect, I'm sure you'll recognize this is a really tough site, very narrow. So I think we've done a pretty good job of getting a lot into this building and really making the program work. You had another question about light and air, but I guess, yeah, you did answer your own question.
I did, thank you.
Yep. And lot coverage, or was that really related to the open space?
It was related to the open space.
Okay, got it.
Anything else, Daughtry? Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from board staff, committee members, board members?
John Dew.
Yes. Yes.
John Dew has a couple of questions. First of all, can you clarify that all of the folks in the building are going to be part of that program? I thought I heard an indication about people being able to apply. Are all of the occupants of this building going to be part of that program? That's the first question. The next question is, do those buildings cast shadows over any other sections of the neighborhood surrounding Emerson Place? The third question is, you're not accommodating any parking, and lots of people feel that that's a good thing these days. The closest train station to that, I believe, is the G train. And that station is not ADA compliant. And going forward, we're asking all developers to look at a possible contribution to making every station in our district, specifically those stations that are further away from the downtown core, ADA compliant. Just needed to put that out there. And do you have the approximate rent of those apartments? Mr. Gordon, that'll be enough for tonight.
Thank you.
I can answer your first and your last question. So your first question was, what's the mix of units going to be? So we're going to have 61 of the units are going to be for the supportive housing program, and 41 of the units will be affordable housing units that go through the New York City lottery. And then to your second question on rent, for the 41 units that are affordable units that will go through the lottery, the rents on those units, the studio, and if you need me to put this in the chat, I'm happy to, but the studios are $947 and the one bedrooms are $1193.
To answer your second question, thank you, Rebecca. To answer your second question, the concern was, would the building cast a shadow on the playground across the street? And we, as part of this application, there's an environmental review that asks that question, and we perform a shadow analysis. We were pleased to determine that there was no significant shadow cast on the playground by the 10-story building, and we are doing a shadow analysis now of the 12-story building. Our understanding is that it's not going to cast what's deemed a significant shadow. All buildings do cast some shadows. There will be some shadow cast, and we wouldn't pretend otherwise. And of course, the building that's going up behind us on the church property, which I believe is 17 stories, that building may also cast a shadow. In fact, I think any shadow that we would cast would be sort of nestled within the other shadow. But what we are in the process of is updating our environmental assessment of the site, and that will be a public document that we will share with the community board when we're finished with it. That will document all of the shadow analysis that we do. We'll have graphs, images, and everything.
Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I guess that's Ernest. I guess.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay, we can barely hear you again, Ernest, but
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Really? What's going on?
I
Okay,
hear
let me-
you fine.
Huh? I'm fine. I have a question. I remember this vaguely, this application. Unfortunately, I normally like to have something physically in hand so I can reference, and I'm going to make some comments. I don't have that. So I'm sort of confused about, and I'm always struck by developers. I don't care if they're for-profit or non-profit. They talk about their program. They never talk about the impact on the community. I'm very sensitive to the fact that Clinton Hill is a historic district and there's a certain character to it. It seems like no one cannot build to the existing zoning, to the character of the neighborhood. We fought for a number of years to have the Fort Greene Clinton Hill contextual zoning, so we can downzone. We have R6 and R6B. We tried to make the effort to have affordable housing by having voluntary inclusionary housing that gave you the affordable housing unit, not the MIH, but developers tend to avoid that. And also, there's an attitude where you're dismissive of open space, as if there's no quality of life issues for tenants or anybody else in the community. Despite what HPD says, or the building department says, I understand for quality of life, open space is essential. I want people to have what I have in the back of my house: open space, light, and air. That's very important to, but it seems to let me maximize the lot size, let me maximize the unit. And when you first came before this land use committee, back then the units were small. Your original building, before you said you were going to knock it down and rebuild, you said that was small. And then you reconfigured this and you submitted it, and now that's small. And now you have come back to say, well, that's small. So now we have to go another three stories up. My understanding that we've been trying to limit leasing Clinton Hill. Hello?
He's,
What happened? You cut me off? Can you hear me?
can
Yes,
hear
sir.
you, Ernest.
All right. Because the issue is that, developers have been, at least they've been trying to negate the contextual character of the neighborhood. I had to see something where it's 17 feet as opposed to 14. I'm a little concerned about that. I have a lot of questions, a lot of concern, from a land use perspective, not from a programmatic perspective. I don't live in a program. I live in a community, and there are other issues regarding the character of this neighborhood that I'm really, really concerned about. I know about the project at St. Mary's, and I could see the heights coming down from Pratt Institute, but I have a deep concern about these heights now, and I don't know how big the units are going to be to accommodate. It's just amazing that you had the Empire State telling you something else, and then HPD and the building department. The explanation doesn't convince me of anything.
Okay, I don't know if you can answer. I see a couple of hands raised. First, let's give the ICL people a moment to try to answer.
Sure. And so
if you can't, we'll just move on.
Well, we'll do our best because it's an important issue and it's one that we struggle with. And as Mr. Augustus points out, there are, you don't build a building and expect it to only have an impact on the residents of the building. Building a building is part of being in a community. It impacts the neighbors. It impacts the experience on the street. You mentioned height, and you mentioned a number of things, but the two things that I believe you came back to most were open space and height. And I can tell you that we as the developers we are a program-based developer. We're not building for a profit. We're not trying to build the tallest building. And we actually would have preferred to have built the smaller building that allowed for that open space at the north end of the zoning lot. As you pointed out, it's good to have some space on your site. Unfortunately, well, maybe not unfortunately, but just sort of the way the application has gone, BSA asked us to extend the building all the way to the northern property line because BSA's concern is the impact on the neighborhood will be reduced if you're expanding your building footprint. And that's why we had to give up the open space. It wasn't something we did lightly. But then when we learned that the building had to include more units, we decided that it was a better impact on the neighborhood, a lesser impact on the neighborhood to eliminate that open space and utilize the play area than to build even taller. This is a unique sort of application to BSA where BSA has said to us, you are developers of affordable housing, you are doing a public good. And as such, you are entitled to certain zoning waivers in much the same way that a school or a hospital or a university or a religious institution gets waivers from zoning, because in furthering that public good, there's a balance there that says we can eliminate some of these zoning restrictions. And the trade-off is pretty simple at BSA. You need to provide that none of your units will ever be more than 60% of the area median income. And there's a math formula. It's one that Rebecca can talk about. It's a little, I'm not that great at math, but basically the idea is you are allowed to build only the smallest building that can house the number of units you need to keep them affordable forever. And so that's why that's sort of how the building came to be. It wasn't driven by design, although I think it's a beautiful design and I think it's sensitive both to the historic and the contemporary parts of the neighborhood. This is a neighborhood that's, it's adjacent to an historic district, but we're not in an historic district. There's a lot of sort of forward-thinking development going on, and I think Datner worked really hard to design a building that fit both of those modes. But the size of the building is circumscribed entirely by the number of affordable housing units that are going into it. I recognize that wasn't a direct answer to your question. Your question was sort of a huge issue. It's not one that I know that I would be able to address in any amount of time. But I hope that was responsive. And if you'd like us to make any sort of further submission in writing, we're happy to do so.
Mr. Gordon, there are
Thank you, Mr.
questions.
Chairman.
Mr. Gordon, there
Yeah,
are questions
okay.
from Nicole Murray, Mark Stern, Brian Howell, and Bill Funai.
Okay, well, on the, okay, ways to work. Those who are not part of the board, if you wish to testify, those who are not part of the board or staff or committee members, if you wish to testify, we'll take you a couple of minutes to testify. I see Miss Murray's hand up, and then you told me of another one. If it's testimony, we can take it at this time for a couple of minutes for each person, and take the testimony, and then I'm gonna head over to Brian and I think Bill for their questions. The thing is that we can't have a back and forth from non-board personnel. So if you have something to testify, we can take the testimony. If we're not, I will then go over to, actually, I saw Brian's first. Brian, okay, you go ahead, Brian.
Okay, thank you. And I think that my question may have been answered, but Mr. Augustus had asked about what benefits are to the community, and I just wanted to make sure that I heard correctly that the 41 units of affordable housing are permanently affordable.
That is correct.
I think I heard.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead. Yeah. Then if you want to answer that, Brian Howard's question.
Oh, they just answered my question. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bill, okay, Bill Funai.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm just going to ask the questions that are putting in the chat from the public. One question was in regards to the number of elevators that's going to be in the facility.
John, do you want me to pull up a plan, or can you answer the question?
It's two elevators. Two elevators.
Two elevators, and capacity of those two elevators?
One is 2,500 pounds. The other is 3,500 pounds. The 3,500 pound one can fit a stretcher, which is a requirement by the FDNY, so they can get somebody out if they have any sort of like cardiac arrest or health issue. But the two elevators are actually meeting the HPD recommendations. And the minimum we ever do in a building is two elevators in case one breaks down.
So how many people can it carry?
I think each elevator cab with, COVID restrictions could easily carry 4 people comfortably. But at 2,500 pounds, you could probably put 8 people in there. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but.
Not a problem. And the other question that was asked was, apparently there's a building going up next to yours that's going to have a parking entrance. Okay, the concern was the safety and location of that parking entrance to your actual physical pedestrian entrance.
I am pretty sure the parking entrance is over on Classen, so it's on the other side of the block. It's certainly not coming in near our frontage. It's not coming in along Willoughby. So it's about as far away from us as it can be.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll have comments, but not for any, I don't have any more questions, just comments later on. I'll do that during the actual meeting itself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other board members, board staff, committee members that wish to bring up any matters on this application?
Mr. Gordon, I didn't hear a response to my question about supporting the ADA access in public transportation. The City Council, as you know, recently approved a bill that allows for any ULURPs for the developer to contribute towards ADA access for for our public transportation, and that's important in this community because we're trying to discourage car use, and folks need to be able to use the train a lot more in order to not buy cars. So we have an obligation to try and get all of these subway stations to be ADA accessible.
I would just make a comment that we certainly share that goal. I think the challenge that we face is that we're going to be a government finance project. And that would require the government, in this case, where we've been in conversations with HPD, and would require HPD to put funds that are set aside for housing towards another use, and that would be at their discretion. So certainly if there's legislation that says that that's what they have to do, including for affordable housing, but it's not as though ICL has a pot of money as a nonprofit that we can contribute to it. It would be coming from us, the taxpayers, going to us, the taxpayers, to the MTA.
Thank you for that. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
And I apologize for missing that question in my initial response. I'm sorry, it was in my notes and I didn't get back to it.
No problem. Are there any other board members, board staff, committee members that wish to address this application?
Mr. Gordon, there was no discussion of resiliency, and that's an issue that we are going to have to discuss with every application that comes before the community board. I'm not quite sure how we want to begin to pose those types of questions, but certainly anytime land is being covered by a building, that means there is less opportunity for rain to get absorbed, and it then goes into the sewer system and does all other kinds of things. So maybe not for this particular application, but we need to talk about how the community board wants to address that going forward.
It's an idea, and it's something we can work with on future applications.
Mr. Gordon, I'd like to follow up
Yes.
with Mr. Dew's question and just ask if the team wants to respond by sharing some of the strategies that they know are going to be incorporated into the building in terms of resiliency and efficiency.
I can. I'm glad you guys are interested. I mean, it's something that I'm actually really passionate about. We do have, as far as stormwater strategies, we have a detention tank in the cellar, which is kind of standard practice. The building is going to comply with the recently passed local laws that either require a green roof or solar PVs on the roof. So we will either be producing power on site, or we'll have that green roof that allows for a slowing down of stormwater being introduced into the DEP infrastructure. The project is also, since it's being funded through HPD, there is a system called Enterprise Green Communities, which sets certain standards for interior environment, health, energy efficiency. So we're going to be complying with that program as well.
Is it possible that you might actually be an all-electric building, or do you think at this point, it might be early for that question, but there was a question in the chat about all-electric or gas ranges, and it made me ask that question.
We will probably do electric ranges. We will probably also do VRF, which is an electrified system for heating and cooling. Domestic hot water is really the big challenge. So the design of this building is so far down the road. The electrified air source heat pumps may actually be more practical for a building of this size for domestic hot water, but that's something we can only really answer as the market kind of evolves. So I wish I had a better answer for you, but that's the best I can give you.
Thank you. That's good enough. Early days, I know, but we appreciate hearing your early thoughts.
Thank you. Again, are there any other board members, committee members? Not hearing any. I will now, at 7:07 p.m., close the hearing for the BSA application at 161 Emerson Place. And we will now commence the meeting of the Landmarks Land Use Committee for Community Board 2. Again, I'll just let those who are not on the committee or board know that we will be, yes, we'll have presenters coming in and they'll be invited to present. Those who are not presenting, we do have a community forum section later on. If there is something that must be addressed, we can maybe work something for a moment for a speaking about it. At this time, we are asking for yes, we'll just say hello again, everybody. This is the Landmark Land Use Committee for Community Board 2. Our coach, you've heard a lot from our co-chair, Dorothy Kostarpin. Our other co-chair is Irene Janner, and I am Carlton Gordon. We're asking now for the approval of the agenda, and I'll be asking to move up the approval of the September minutes, but as a part of it. But at this time, we're asking for approval of this month's agenda.
John Doe, so
couple
moved.
people.
Second.
John
All right.
Doe, so moved.
Okay, thank you. Again, I am now asking to move up to actually right now, just after this, is the approval of the September minutes. We'll ask her to approve just after the approval of the agenda. Is there any objections to the agenda as we have it? I hear no objections, so the agenda has been
Do you mean
adopted.
the minutes? We already approved
yes?
the agenda. We already approved the
Okay.
agenda. You mean the minutes.
Agenda? Okay, well, it's now done. Now I'm asking for approval of the September minutes. And if there's,
So moved.
do we have any, okay, thank you. I'll second it. If there are no objection, the September minutes have been adopted. Now we're going to go back for the approval. Now, we just heard the hearing, and now we have a vote for the approval of the application at 161 Emerson Place. Do we have a motion to approve?
Bill Flynn.
John Doe,
second.
second. John Doe, second.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Are there any comments or questions on the motion to approve?
I don't have any comments or questions about this particular motion, but again, I have to repeat, we are going to have to go forward with a plan for resiliency for all of these ULURP applications. So we need to do something that requires the developers who are submitting to produce that information in advance.
Okay, thank you. Any other from, yes.
I'm sort of concerned about how you make a BSA application and how you end up at BSA. Because it came up with other developers who wanted to get a zoning change. And I'm talking about like 142 South Portland, who wanted to build over a church.
Turn it
Up in a second.
Okay, all right. And the question is, you go to BSA, could you say to BSA that I'm facing a financial hardship given the configuration of the lot? And BSA typically say, open your books and let's look at it and see how much of a hardship that is. There's a criteria. And I'm somewhat a little anxious that wasn't clearly explained, where BSA tells you, well, you have to expand your footprint and expand your building heights, maybe to address a financial impact. Nobody hasn't opened their books to us to explain it. Developers don't do that. I don't care if they're for-profit or non-profit. These are things that has an impact. Because they said originally they're going to build within the footprint of their site. They're going to knock the building down. They weren't going to expand the footprint of their property. They own the building, and that was their site. And then they come back and say, well, we can't make it affordable, so we have to change. There's something that I'm not comfortable with.
What, the bike?
Mr. Gordon, there's a motion
one
on the
at a time.
floor. There's a motion on the floor.
Right.
I'm not sure that, I think we need to vote on the motion, then discuss, right?
I thought we voted on the motion.
No, we just.
Well, the
we have-
motion now is to approve. Okay, motion right now is to approve the application. So they can then proceed. That's where we are right now.
Yeah.
Do the
We have
roll
a
call.
motion to approve. Yes, we have a motion to approve. It's been duly seconded. We're going to take any comments, ask comments from committee members and board members. I think Esther had something she wanted to say. No? Okay.
Mr. Gordon, I've had my
Is there-
hand up.
Okay. Oh, you have it. Okay, go ahead, Bill. I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
No, that's no problem. Okay. Thank you very much for this presentation. I understand the constraints that you had to now deal with after we approved it last year. Okay, totally understand that. And that's why you came back to us. I have been involved. I've been on the board of the Skirmerhorn, which is something very similar to this. And I understand what you're doing. Okay. I also appreciate the fact that you're looking at 60% of the AMI. Okay, and also you're looking at 30% of the income of the applicants. Okay, one of the things that this board has been considering and demanding is true affordable housing. Okay, not affordable housing that is only for those who are coming into the neighborhood who are making six figures. Okay, if you're going to basically do what you're saying is 30% of a person's income, that's affordable. And that we appreciate because that's truly affordable for those individuals. My only issue is, of course, which has already been discussed, is the space that we're losing, okay, as far as, having to build up, and also the actual additional height. But I feel comfortable, in fact, that you are doing what you're doing because you're actually looking out for the residents for a true affordable housing. And because of that, that's why I'm supporting this. So I just want to say thank you for that. But there are concerns. You've heard the concerns. Okay. The height issue is a big problem. But for what you're asking for, what you're doing, I'm okay with that. If you were just a regular development, I would say no. Okay. But because you're doing true affordable housing, I'm saying yes. So for that, thank you.
The motion is on the floor, Bill, so Daughtry has to call us.
Actually, there's for comments
roll
right now,
call.
John,
I'll
but I
take a roll.
appreciate it.
Anybody give me a roll call?
No, the motion is on the floor. The motion is
Yeah.
on the floor.
Yeah, but we have comment period. And this was comment period, John, for
Right,
the
I
committee
think we're
members.
wrapping up the-
And right. Thank you, John.
Right, we're wrapping up the comments. Wrapping up comments. Any last comments? Hearing none, let's do a roll call. I will vote
Melton,
yes.
I'll
Yes.
I'll call the members alphabetically. It helps us keep
Okay.
track easier.
All right, go ahead.
Ernie Augustus,
No.
Esther Blount,
Yes.
Patricia Staffen,
Sorry, I'm sorry. Yes.
John Doe,
Yes.
Sonoy,
Yes.
Alton Gordon,
Yes.
Brian Howard,
Yes.
Irene Janner, Irene,
Welcome to Irene.
okay, Judy Stanton,
Yes.
Irene, can you unmute yourself? Oh. In the absence of Irene's vote, we have 7-1.
7-1. Motion passes. We received our
Yep.
approval. All right,
Yep.
hopefully we won't have to see you again.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you again.
But
Thank
we
you.
would like to be kept up to date. I would love for you to send an update as you develop your drawings, as you develop the project. We'd love to just stay in the loop. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and we will certainly
Thank
update the
you.
board.
I
We
see,
appreciate your
I see Irene unmuted. Irene, you said you're,
Yes.
are you also? Yes, okay.
Can you hear me
Up
now?
to 8. All right. Okay, sure. Irene makes it 8.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so
Okay.
much for your time.
Next, now we go over to the Brooklyn Borough-based jail proposal for the public, they refer to the Public Design Commission, which is located, I think almost everybody knows, at 275 Atlantic Avenue. And it says Norberto is to be presenting, and go right ahead, please.
I think, David, do we have you on? Sorry, one moment, please.
Okay.
David Lewis?
Daughtry,
Yes.
do you have the questions from Mr. Collins?
I will, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. David Lewis, we see that you are unmuted, but we are not able to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Is that David Lewis?
No, this is John Doe. You said, can you hear me?
No, John, we can hear you just fine. I'm saying David Lewis, the speaker, we see that you're unmuted, but we cannot hear you. David Lewis's audio does not appear to be working.
Okay.
Anybody else
Why don't we
present?
Sure. Why don't we jump in? Hi, everyone. My name is Norberto Acevedo. I am the director of the Office of Community Outreach and Notification for the New York City Department of Design and Construction. We're here tonight to present to Committee Board 2, the Land Use Committee, a portion of the larger borough-based jails program, which is the swing space and/or Sally Port that will be used while the facility is being, the current facility will be dismantled and the new facility to be built. We can go to the next slide. So of course we have some members of the DDC team, MOCJ, City Hall, CAU on the line. If there are questions that they can help answer later, we'll certainly do that. We're going to go through one slide with schedule and then focus in on what the Sally Port renderings are. And we have members of our consultant design team to go through that. Next slide. So Brooklyn site schedule. This is more of a timeline. We thought about carving out just this Sally Port process, the design, the construction, but it seemed best that we show where that fits in the grand scheme of the program specific to the Brooklyn site. So that's why you're seeing here, we have the dismantle, which is part of the Sally Port happening. We are here today at that red star that would be denoting where we are currently in time. And as you can see, as the year 2022 begins, we will begin the process of the swing space and dismantle, where as soon as we have further information on specifics about schedule, we are certainly going to come back to the community board and share that in advance. What you're
Yes,
also
what a
seeing on this
Sally port is?
timeline.
Yeah.
I'm
Mr.
sorry, say again?
Lesamea, just tell them what is a Sally port? What, try to picture that in my.
Basically, Department of Corrections, they actually shuttle those in custody to and from the courts, and they need secure and safe access to do so. And since the current facility is going to be dismantled, there needs to be what we call a swing space, another space that we're going to utilize, or DOC, Department of Corrections, will utilize to continue transporting those in custody in and out of the court, which is on State Street. So that's in essence what this is, because they wouldn't be able to use the current facility. We will have to make arrangements for them to use a different access point to the courts. So that's what that means. Moving back to the timeline, you'll see the black bar going across the few years. That is overlaid just to show that after the dismantle, there will also be the design and construction of the actual facility, the new building, basically, that will go in its place of the current Brooklyn Detention Center. I think we can go to the next slide. So at this point, we're going to hand it over to our design team to take us through what this interim Sally Port will look like.
Evening, everyone. My name is Emerson Cologne. I am Associate VP. I'm an architect with the Lero Group. We're working with North Star on the project. I'm going to walk you through. This project is actually fairly straightforward compared to the one we just witnessed. I'm going to read.
Remsen, I'm sorry, if you could, you're a little bit muted, like we can hear you, but if you could speak a little closer to your mic, maybe.
I'll try doing it right on the phone. Is this better?
That's better.
Okay.
Thank you.
So again, this project is in two parts. The Sally Port, and I'll define it again. Roberto did a pretty good job, but it's basically a vestibule, a secured vestibule that allows for controlled access in and out of the space. His definition was a little neater. I just thought simply go through it. We can go to the next slide. So just to give you some context, this is the interim Sally Port location. The entrance for it is located on State Street, right in downtown Brooklyn. The site itself, the court and the detention facility, are bounded by Smith Street, Atlantic Avenue, Borum Place, and then Skimmerhorn on the north side. That blue dot is the location, and we're going to get more details of the entrance and the proposed officer booth right on State Street. Next slide. This is a view of the courthouse on the left, and very tiny there, the proposed officer booth on the sidewalk. And on the right is a satellite view, and you can see the courthouse building on State Street, and that tiny red dot is where we're proposing an officer booth. And we're going to zoom in, you'll get a better sense of where the Sally Port will begin. Also to mention, if we can go back to that previous slide, that red dashed area is the courtyard that will serve as the interim Sally Port, and the entrance to that is right near the officer booth. The entrance is right off State Street, and we can go to the next slide. This is actually just the view of the courthouse main entrance from Skimmerhorn. The bulk of our work is actually on the opposite side, right on State Street. So next slide. This is a view from Smith Street, looking down Smith Street and looking down State Street. And so to the left there is the facade, State Street facade, where our intervention will be going. And this is essentially that opening you're looking at, that entrance there leads down a ramp to the courtyard we looked at in the satellite photo. And that white car right in the foreground is essentially, or just behind that is where the officer booth will be going. These are existing conditions of the space. This is the view. This is currently where we will be using this entryway to transport people back and forth in the courthouse, from the courthouse. And this area will be enclosed. There'll be new double doors, and this leads to the courtyard you saw in the satellite photo. This is an overall site plan. I think this is a picture of the courthouse grayed out. I hope you can see that. And the blue is the proposed officer booth. As you can see, it's got a pretty small footprint. That arrow is pointing to that entryway you saw, the ramped. And as you can see, it goes down to a courtyard space. It's bounded. It's important to get a sense of context here. The site is essentially bounded, surrounded by most critically, the Frontiers High School and the apartments to the left, but the criminal courthouse hugs about 3/4 of that courtyard. We focus on the high school in particular. You'll see renderings of that. Again, this is just an existing elevation. You can see that opening we looked at in the photograph. There's a staff exit door there. Next slide. And here's a first look at the elevations. We're proposing these hinged double doors. They're going to match, the finish will match the aluminum bronze of the existing windows and window frames. And the officer booth will be sort of complements the base of the existing building, which is a gray granite, and there's limestone above. It's a pretty simplified building, again with a very small footprint. And for scale, you can see the size of the buildings. About 10 of the officer booth is about 10 feet high, and its footprint is around 7.5 feet by 6 feet. Next slide. This is a section of that area. You can see the officer booth, and we in the plan we actually bump out the sidewalk so that we can shift the booth and keep as much of the sidewalk as we access on that sidewalk. It's about 13.5 feet from the sidewalk to the building. We'll have about 10 feet remaining after the booth is placed, the proposed booth. The advantages of this booth obviously are State Street. It'll be manned 24/7, and so it'll provide an additional level of security for State Street. There is actually existing lighting and CCTV cameras on the existing building. The booth will have additional lighting and CCTV cameras. And so it should provide a 24-hour presence on that street. You can go on to the next slide. Here, we're showing some renderings of the proposed booth. Material-wise, we have chosen a insulated metal panel with glazing on the middle strip. Again, the metal panel finish is basically to complement that granite base, the existing granite base. And you can see on that one rendering for the east elevation that it's got the sidewalk bump out. This is, again, we scooted the booth over to maintain as much of the sidewalk as we could. The glazing, as you can see on all the elevations, wraps around the entire booth, again, trying to give the security 360 degrees of view. There's bollards for protection. In terms of parking, State Street parking on the court side is primarily it's non-public parking. It's police officer parking, staff parking. That bump out will lose one spot of non-public parking in order to provide that. Next slide. This is a view from across the street. As you can see, that the booth, the officer's booth, and the double hinged doors that lead down to the ramped sally port, interim sally port, and the existing building as context. So, the intervention is essentially those doors and that booth. We're going to talk about the interior, the courtyard in a second. Next slide. I'm going to give a little bit of context to this rendering because it might be a little bit tough to understand, but I know I mentioned the high school, and this is actually a view from the high school into that courtyard. And the big factor was really screening what happened in the court, the activities in the courtyard. And so that large wall on the foreground belongs to, it's shared by the courthouse and the buildings out back. And that wall is actually 25 feet tall. And off of that back wall, we're hanging sort of metal mesh screen that extends out 6 feet, the purpose of which is to further obscure any activities that are happening in the courtyard. That's the comings and goings. I think we can go on to the next slide, actually. This is a quick list of the materials I just went over. It's the metal panels for the officer booth, glazing, bollards will be stainless steel. The sidewalk, obviously, that bump out will match the existing sidewalk. The double doors will be at that dark bronze finish, which matches the aluminum, matches the frames of the existing windows. That screening system that we're providing is in the expanded metal mesh that we're planning on painting sort of a light gray, and the frames around to support that large screen. And I think the last slide. There's some it's actually existing photos, existing condition, and some of the materials that we're hoping to use. So that there's the main facade, and on the second picture is basically that metal panel. I don't know if it comes out that well on that picture, but essentially that metal panel for the booth, the glazing, which has a slight tint to it, and then the tinted glass and the metal panel against that limestone back. I'm sorry, the granite base. I think with that, Norberto, or I turn it over to Anna.
Actually, I could take this on. Sure. Throughout this process, we, of course, will be hiring what we call a community construction liaison, or CCL. We plan on bringing this individual on board in the next month or two. And once we do, we will certainly reach back out to ensure everyone has the CCL's contact information. That person will be the main point of contact for the duration of this project in all its phases for information and issues, complaints, questions, anything like that. But in the meantime, before we onboard the new CCL, we have Anna Killian, who is part of the DDC outreach team. And for questions after tonight that come up, or anything you want to ask about this, I encourage everyone to copy down this information, and you can contact her with any questions. And at this point, this concludes our presentation. Excuse me, I'll hand it over to the board and let us know if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Will the community construction liaison be in touch with our board staff, with Ms. Church and Ms. Mueller?
Absolutely, yes. And for now, it will be Anna Killian, and then it will be our new consultant CCL that will announce as soon as they're on board.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll ask for any comments from committee members, board staff, board members.
I It's Irene. Can you hear
Yes,
me?
Irene.
Okay.
Yeah, I
A
got you,
question.
Irene.
Okay. I have a question. You have a screen up to hide the view from the high school, but what about sound?
Hi. Well, right now, the school and the distance actually to the corridor is pretty far away. We're not having any issues with sound. We shouldn't have too much sound since it's vehicles coming in, and the distance from the sally port, the controlled area, to where they enter the courthouse is actually quite short. And so they're not spending much time in the sally port. The sally port area, it's basically, like I mentioned in the beginning, it's basically a gate that provides a controlled area. So it's very much a temporary like way station area. They're not going to be there for more than a minute or two. The idea being that the gate will roll up and they get immediately transported right into the building. So I don't see shouldn't be much opportunity for sound, to be honest with you. And the existing building, although maybe it's not so clear in the plan, it's actually quite far away from the courtyard. The courtyard is sort of interior, and it's got that 25-foot wall that's blocking it. So
Thank you.
Don't foresee too much sound. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. Any other questions, comments from committee members?
Mr. Gordon, yes,
board
this is
members?
Bill Flournoy. I have my hand up.
Yes, Bill.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if you can see it. That's why I interrupt. Okay. Question.
Now it's see.
Now you see it. Okay. Perfect. Okay. On the sally port. Okay. I was curious of the dimensions of the sally port.
Sorry. So the sally port, the actual contained area is along the ramp only. And then once you, from the ramp, the width of that ramp is 10 feet.
Sorry, let me rephrase that. The entrance, what's the dimensions of the entrance to the
10 feet wide.
10 feet wide, and the height?
Yep. 14 feet.
14 feet. I was just kind of curious because if you're transporting individuals in, I was wondering the size of the vehicles that would be transporting.
Well, that's exactly, that's one of the constraints we're going into about what kind of vehicles, whether their side mirrors would hit the ramp as they're going down. But there's definitely going to be, those walls cannot change. That 10-foot clear dimension, in fact, it's a little bit less than that. We have to hold that dimension. So the vehicle's size and going down there will be limited. There's not so many. You can't just go in there with a bus, obviously. So right now they have to hold the 10-foot clear dimension. And in fact, we're looking into this because the doors themselves, they're huge doors, and just the width of the doors themselves are going to reduce our clear width when they open up. So there's quite a bit of limitations in terms of the types of vehicles that can go into the space to begin with. But that's a kind of fixed dimension that we can't really change.
Understood. The other question I was going to ask you is, when a vehicle goes in, what's the space for it to turn around and come back out?
So once, if I don't know if you want to put that slide back up, but once you roll down, you go into a courtyard. And the courtyard does give you a little bit more room to actually maneuver and turn around. I don't know if we could put that slide back up, but there is enough room currently in the courtyard. There's actually cars parked in that courtyard. So that white area, exactly that white area. There's enough room to go down the ramp, do a right, and then you can go up north and do like a 3-point turnaround and come back around. In fact, there's cars parked in that area now, so there's enough room for people to come in and out that space. Yeah, if you can follow up that person's mouse, they're doing a great job showing how it works.
Not a problem. Thank you. Answer the question. That's perfect. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Yes, I'm going to go on order of my screen, and the next. Okay. Oh, now it's Esther. Esther comes up next on my screen with a raised hand.
I just want to ask about the the new jail that's going to be built. Do you know who the developer is? And do you know when they will start the demolition and how long it's going to take to build?
Pauline, if you could go back to the timeline slide, that would be helpful. I'd certainly give you some answers to that. We just want to make sure we're staying focused. We're here presenting just on this sally port and the guard booth and gate design. So I don't want to get too far off topic. But if you look at this timeline, the bar that's black, it says design construction closeout. So this is starting in early 2023 and going through 2027. That will be the duration of time for building the facility, the new facility. And then the bar above it to the left, the gray bar that says dismantle, that's indicating the length of time, approximately a little over a year and a half for the dismantle of what is currently there. I hope that answers
thank
the
you.
question.
Yes. Okay. Next on the hand raise is Brian Howell. Brian, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple questions. The booth, I wasn't quite clear who was going to be operating it. Was that DOC?
Yes, that will be Department of Corrections.
Okay, thank you. I also don't remember it being mentioned, but I just want to make it explicit. People will still be able to walk freely on the northern sidewalk of State Street between Adams and Smith, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and follow up on Brian's question. It'll be a corrections officer in the booth.
Yes.
Yes, okay, correct. All right, thank you. Next is with hand up is John Dew. John?
Yes. A question that we did not ask during the first presentation. In terms of traffic, do you have an estimate of how much traffic, and that is particularly an important issue now that the BQE cantilever has been reduced to 2 lanes, and a lot of that excess traffic is now flowing downtown Brooklyn. So the concern is how all of the additional traffic is going to be accommodated, and how much traffic is routinely going in and out of the facility. And the other question is, you're not talking about the inside of the building. Can we assume that everything is the same, exactly the same as it was during the first presentation with the inside of the building? That's it for now.
Thank you, John. You have a response?
So for the amount of vehicles coming, transporting those in custody through the Department of Correction, I don't have that number.
Norberto, I can provide, I can provide some preliminary numbers, and I just want to make it clear that, right now there is no one being housed in the Brooklyn jail. And so these numbers are reflective of likely what will continue. And right now we have around and this is approximately, there are 6 vans or buses in its entirety throughout the day.
You're saying 6 buses that would be going back and forth between the jail and the courthouse?
No, that would be bringing people from Rikers Island to the courthouse.
Okay. I thought Rikers Island was going to close as a result of building these jails.
And someone else feel free to answer this, but I can jump in. The plan, this temporary solid port that we are showing here is for the duration of construction when we are constructing the new jail on the Brooklyn site, before it is open and operational in order to close Rikers Island.
So I'm still unclear. Rikers Island is going to close, so those buses will be in operation after this facility is opened up. So it is taking folks from where to where?
Hi, I can try and jump in here. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Hi, great. Thank you so much. My name is Lindsay Shields. I'm from the Department of Design and Construction. So for the period starting about the beginning of next year for about a year and a half, the current Brooklyn Detention Center will be dismantled. Part of the operations for DOC that happen at that detention center is bringing folks to the courthouse at 120 Schermerhorn for court production. Those operations need to continue while the Brooklyn Detention Center is being dismantled. While the Brooklyn Detention Center is being dismantled, folks have been moved onto the jails on Rikers Island. And while the dismantle is going on, the Department of Corrections will be using vans or buses to take people to court from Rikers Island. And in order to allow for a safe transition of folks from the buses to the courthouse, they are using that secured Sallyport entrance. So only for the period of construction will that Sallyport be used. And then when the facility is online and complete in the future in 2027, DOC will cease using this Sallyport that we're discussing today, and their operations will be within the new borough-based facility.
That's a cogent explanation. Thank you for that.
You're so welcome.
What about
Anything?
inside of the building? Everything inside remains the same as what we saw a couple of years ago?
Which building are you talking about?
The actual jail facility.
The borough-based jail facility?
Yes.
So as Norberto said, we are here to talk about the Sallyport. The design, I'll just to kind of quickly respond to your question, and then we can get back to the Sallyport and any questions on that or the officer booth. The design for the borough-based jail facility has not yet been finalized. We have not chosen a design builder for that facility. We're still working on these early works projects. So when but the principles of the program that we've been talking about for several years remain, and we're continuing to work on procurements for these early works and then eventually for the facilities as well. And we will certainly be coming back to the community board to talk about the facility.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Judy Stanton had her hand up, but doesn't have it now. Do you have a question?
No, my question was answered earlier. Thanks, Carlton.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from board staff, community board members?
Just have one quick clarification.
Yes.
When
Yes,
the
Carolyn.
when use of the Sallyport is discontinued, it will be dismantled and removed, right?
That is correct. And that work will be done by the future design builder. Yes, the future design builder for the facility.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Gordon, I
Thank
have
you,
a question.
Caroline. Yes, Elfie.
I think there's been some questions about the impact on that block of State Street between Smith Street and Brooklyn Bridge Boulevard in terms of traffic and how many of the travel lanes might be affected while this temporary situation is in place. Can you answer that, please?
Hi, yeah, I can answer that one again. Lindsay, DDC. So currently there are no permanent, like full State Street closures being proposed in this proposal. This Sallyport is a kind of new development for the BBJ program. So the city is in the midst of a technical memorandum to study the to update the EIS and study the potential for any traffic impacts that are resulting from either this bump out or DOC's buses coming along this street as opposed to along Smith Street, which is where they're currently going. So right now there's not expected to be any significant traffic impacts, but we'll also have the tech memo coming out shortly that we can provide to you guys and also provide a little bit more of a quantitative analysis for you.
Yes, I'm sorry, I was laughing about the EIS because we all know what they say. I think to Mr. Flanoy's point in the chat that I live on State Street, and I know someone else mentioned this too, but it is one of the few ways to get actually from west to east in this area. So I think there was some concern about it being shut down, but what I heard was that that block will not be shut down, at least while the Sallyport and the booth are constructed.
There might be some temporary partial closures, either of streets or sidewalks, but all of that is going to be coordinated with DOT's OCMC. It's Office of Construction Management and Coordination. Maybe Aaron or somebody from the design build team can speak a little bit more to that level of coordination.
Yeah, and I think if there is any closures on that, it's that bump out that we're proposing is within a parking spot. So, and it's such a small bump out, it's like 3.5 feet or so. And so it's actually 4.5 feet. So, like I said, there really, I don't see any reason for them to close that for a long period. It's just a small bump out occupying a previous parking spot. And so, you know, there's going to be a little bit of work for sure for the bollard work and that bump out. But again, that street right in front, right just beyond the cars, if you know State Street, there shouldn't be, if there's any closures, they're going to be for a very short period of time. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other committee members or board members that have any comments or questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is Brian Howell. I had another question for
Yes, Brian.
If I'm not mistaken, the presenter said that people who were recently arrested might be brought to the courthouse through this entrance. And I know how this project is related to the jails and that this has to do with the construction of the new buildings. But I guess I'm curious, even in the absence of jails, would this booth in Sallyport still be necessary, say, to bring people who were recently arrested to the courthouse?
So I think that goes back to what was previously said, that this is temporary. The guard booth and the doors to this Sallyport that we just showed you the renderings of is going to be there for the duration of the greater build of the facility. Once that facility is operational, that will no longer be used.
I noticed the title of the application does say interim report.
I understand that. I was asking for a bit of speculation. Say the jails don't get built. Would this structure still have a purpose? Because people who were being, recently arrested would need to be brought to the courthouse.
I certainly understand your question, but respectfully, we can't get into, whether that could happen or not, we don't know.
Fair enough. Just wanted to pose the question directly. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, it's almost 8 o'clock and we barely
Yes.
have gotten into the agenda.
I know,
And people are drifting all over the place. We have one
I
thing
know.
on, can we just stick to the point and move forward, please?
I appreciate what you, Bill. Unless there's something else, I wish to, if it must be said by a committee member or board member, I now wish to move on for a motion, either to, a motion to approve. Do I have
So
a mo-
moved,
do I
John
have a-
Do. So moved, John Do.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it. Bill
Okay,
Flynn.
John and Bill have moved. They say, all right, now we have any comments or questions on the motion?
I have
Hearing
just
none?
one no, I do have one question. When
Okay.
you said the State Street is going to be closed for a short period of time, is that short period defined in hours or days?
I can't. The time frame is the time frame it would take to actually build out that bump out, and so again, I'm speculating. I'm not even sure if it would require a shutdown of the street, but it is coming into a parking spot about 4.5 feet. So I'm speculating, but I would imagine it wouldn't take any more than a day to do it.
Thank you.
Not that much work. There's just
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from committee or board members? Hearing none, let's do a roll call of the motion to approve the interim Sally Port at the Brooklyn House of Detention, 275 Atlantic Avenue.
1 second. Okay, Ernie Augustus, Mr. Augustus, you were muted.
I'm muted now. I'm going to abstain.
Okay,
Abstain.
Esther Blount,
Approve.
Patricia
I think you said
Staffa,
yes.
Yes.
John Doe,
Yes.
Flanoy,
Yes, I'm approving the Brooklyn jail.
Alton Gordon,
Yes.
Brian Howell,
Same.
Irene Jenner,
Yes.
Judy Stanton.
Yes.
And we have 702, 7 in favor,
702.
none opposed, 2 abstentions.
All right, motion passes. Thank you. And now we move on to the Landmark Preservation Commission applications. My apologies for delaying you folks. All these things take time. The first one is 265 Lafayette Avenue in the Clinton Hill Historic District.
Yes, thank you and good evening, everyone. I'm going to ask if we can have our presentation put up. I have someone assisting me with that. Yes, good evening. My name is Pamela Morrison, and I'm an officer of the Apostolic Faith Mission. We're a church that's located at 265 Lafayette Avenue on the corner of Washington and Lafayette Avenues, and we're in the Clinton Hill Historic District. On behalf of our pastor, Reverend Wyatt Jr., and our congregation, we want to thank you for this opportunity and your time to present to you our request for signage permission for our existing church sign and for permission to repair and upgrade our current sign with a monochrome LED display board. You can advance to the next page, please. That little blue square there on that map, that's where our church is located. Next page, please. These pictures here are some of our surrounding community neighbors that are within the four corners where our church is located. We have the Underwood Park. We have the Grays Gym. Emmanuel Baptist Church is right next door to us. And we have several residential brownstones as well as the G train station, which is adjacent to and across the street from our church. Just to mention some of our neighbors there in the community. Here these are some pictures, some historical pictures of our church dating back to the 1940s, including a photo from 1981 when the church was designated. Our historic photos demonstrate that the church has always had a sign that we offered to the community. The 1981 signage that you see highlighted there in the green square is the sign that the church had prior to the current sign that we have now. You can advance to the next page.
This is the current sign.
Yes.
At this time. Yeah.
Yes, this is the current sign that the church has to date. In 2005, the sign that the church was designated with was in need of repair. And this is the current signage that was erected. The pastor at that time, however, was unaware that the church needed to file an application with the New York City landmarks to obtain approval and to receive a permit for the new signage. In an effort to try to color coordinate the new signage with the church color scheme, and as you can see there in the picture, part of the color scheme is the building is white, trimmed in maroon. The color that was chosen for the sign was maroon, and so that's why the sign is that color. The church sign faces diagonal on the corner of Lafayette and Washington Avenues. Next slide, please. In July of 2020, our church sign suffered damage from a car accident in the community. One of the vehicles that was involved in the accident came across the curb and crashed into our fence and our front garden area near the sign. The exterior of the sign was spared, but the inner case where the white letter display board is suffered damage, as well as the outer plexiglass as seen in this photo. Next slide, please. This picture here is a draft that displays the dimensions of the sign, the front view and the side view. Next slide, please. We have some pictures in color, same dimensions. This is the front view. Next slide, please. And this is the side view. Next slide, please. Because
So-
I was,
The existing sign, was that eventually permitted by the Landmarks Commission or not? The existing sign.
the existing sign now, no, it was not, because back in 2005, the pastor at that time was not aware that the signage was part of the landmark designation.
Heard that, it just wasn't clear. What happened?
Right, no, we didn't have a permit for this sign.
Mr. Chair, Judy's brought up a brought up an issue also that what they should be asking for is to legalize the existing sign, not to actually have a new sign put up.
No, because the existing sign wasn't legalized. It wasn't actually permitted for landmarks. They have no record that that sign was installed. And what they're doing now is sort of pretending like that never happened and proposing a new sign, from my understanding.
Exactly.
We said earlier in our proposal that we were asking for permission for the signage, as well as permission for repair and upgrade of the sign. So we're asking for two things. Well, three. We're asking for permission for the signage, because back in 2005, the pastor at that time was not aware that he needed to go through landmarks to get a permit for this new signage to replace the signage that was a part of the designation. But because he did not do that, that's why we're here today. And we're asking for permission for the church signage. We're also asking to repair the sign. And while we repair the sign, we're asking to also upgrade the sign while we do the repair.
So what we're seeing right now on screen is sort of like a upgraded version, and I guess the bottom part.
I can
with the
explain
Reverend
that.
Wyatt's name.
I can,
Yeah.
right. I can explain the slide. Because our sign is damaged, we thought to take this opportunity to not only repair the sign, but to try to upgrade the sign as well. The original white letterboard had its limitations in that it had limited space on the board to adequately display announcements and upcoming events. The original letterboard was also manually operated, meaning someone had to physically place letters to spell out the words on the board to display information. With an upgrade to an LED display screen, our church staff can now not only include more detailed announcements and information, but will have the ability to update the information remotely. Since COVID-19, some of the church staff has been working remotely. Having access to update the sign remotely via computer will assist our staff greatly. This view of the sign is a sample of what our proposal would look like with a monochrome LED display board.
I see, well, I'll bring up two things. I see that on the presentation here that there will be the light will go down, it will be dimmed from 11 p.m. I guess until, what is it, the next morning?
Yes.
I can't read the rest of it with all the stuff we have on here, but it will be
yes, I have that in my upcoming slides too.
Okay, and the other thing I should point out that the board office has received letters of, I don't know, from the community, from community members who are they do not like, or they are opposing the new signage. So that should just for the record to be pointed out.
Okay. Should I continue?
Yes, please continue.
Okay, if you can advance to the next slide, please. Generally, the display will be monochrome on a black backboard. Special events and holidays and important announcements will include muted colors and pictorial display with text. Screen changes will occur with a modest swipe speed or a direct cut. Images will remain static for a period of time. It is not the intent to run video motion pictures or flashy animations. In the evenings, as was stated by the chairperson, the display screen will automatically adjust to the light level for the time of day and will be dimmed after dark. The display will be further dimmed for the time period from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. And we just have one more screen in our display. The LED display board is 19 inches high. This is just a display board, not the sign. It's 63 inches long. It will be mounted inside the enclosure of the sign. We would keep the outer shell of the sign. The enclosure already has power coming into it. The LED display board will get its power from that source. And a new plexiglass would be put on front of the sign. Some additional features of the LED display board are listed here on this slide. And that basically does conclude our presentation.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from?
Irene has a question.
Irene, go ahead.
Yeah. The current sign, is that illuminated?
Yes.
I do have our technical assistant that is in our meeting. And he, John, if you want to take that question.
I heard it.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I thought I heard the architect say initially that it was illuminated.
There is a fluorescent light behind it on a timer. To be honest with you, I don't remember if it even still works, but yeah, there was a fluorescent light behind the letter part of the sign that went on in the evening for a couple of hours and then went out. That's about it.
That's your question, Judy?
Well, I wanted to make comments, but if we're not ready.
Go ahead.
I'm very sorry to say that I don't think there's anything about the current sign, which they hope to legalize and upgrade, that is appropriate in an historic district, not this historic district, certainly. And even though the color is taken from the trim on the church, I still don't find the dimensions of the side, not just the part that's to be digitized. The whole side, I don't know how high it is, but it looks huge. And I don't know any church there's no church in my historic district with such an enormous sign. And I doubt there's another. It's just, there's nothing about it that's appropriate. And I'm just sorry. I'm hoping that the church can come up with a more modestly sized sign and come back to the board, to the community board. And maybe we could consider, moving digital image. That troubles me, but I don't think we're even at that point yet. I think the sign itself is the church is lovely. I think the sign is a shame.
Thank you, Judy. Let's hear any other comments, questions from
Carlton?
Bill Flournoy, I have my hand up.
Bill? Okay, Bill, go ahead.
Question, I'm sorry, before I ask make my comment, you mentioned something about you had a email or letter. Could you repeat that letter again, please? That you read?
I think the board received letters.
Right.
Board office.
And you mentioned something about the sign itself.
That's my understanding.
No, what did they say about what did the letter say?
I don't, that's all I know. Yeah.
Mr. Gordon,
Hello.
someone is here from Clinton Hill Community Organization that wants to tell you why they are opposed to sign.
Okay, Esther, I'm not done answering my question.
I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. I was asking, before I asked the question, I wanted to hear if Mr. Gordon heard anything from the LPC saying that they They wanted the original.
No, I don't have anything.
That's what I was
further.
asking. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Okay,
Okay.
my feeling about this is I would legalize the existing sign, but the new signage that you're asking for, it was illuminated, but now you're asking for LED lights that would be moving. And I think that's a little, I think what we should be focused on is simply legalizing the sign that you had, not legalizing and upgrading it. I think you're putting the cart before the horse. First, we have to approve, we have to legalize what was already there.
Okay,
That's
let
my
me go.
feeling.
Well, first, let me go with committee members and board members first. And then I will ask for I will allow after committee members and board members, 2 minutes to the person that Esther Blount has said, just to hear what the community has to say. Next would be Ernest Augustus.
Unfortunately, unfortunately, the old sign and the proposed sign are in violation of the zoning reg. They're in the R6 district, historic district, and the regs. If you look at the signage regs, with the Landmark Preservation Commission, it definitely prohibits any type of illumination of a community facility of a church, except for maybe a hospital, and that can't even be blinking. So the issue is not, we can't legalize or even suggest to legalize the old form sign, but also that's in violation of the regs, and also the proposed new illuminated digital sign. I spoke to people in Clinton Hill, who basically said they want to be helpful to the church and to work with the church to help them come up with the appropriate signage. We're not opposing something; we are proposing something, so that they can at least be compatible or in conformity with the zoning regs. That should address issues in the present and in the future. I don't expect people to be fully grounded in these regs. They may not know about it. They could go out and hire an architect who's familiar with landmark preservation application and help them that way. But if they, but we also like to extend a hand in terms of providing the appropriate information in terms of signage.
Okay, thank you, Ernest. John Doe?
Yes, we haven't received any complaints about that sign to date. I didn't hear that there were any complaints ever issued against the current signage. So because it's there, the community has accepted it. The historic community has accepted it because no one has submitted a complaint about it. So the church is coming forward. I agree that illuminated signage would be inappropriate because in addition to that, church, you would set a very bad precedent, meaning that we can now do that at any church. So for that reason, I would not like to see the illuminated signage, but I would also like to acknowledge that 132 St. Felix was approved, and that's in a historic district, and that's a 23-story tower. So the respect for the historic district is something else that we also need to address on a different level. I'm done.
Thank you. Daughtry?
I just want to remind us that I believe we did approve an illuminated sign on the church right in the same area. The signage last year that was lit up, that was LED. It happened to be on the building of the church, not away from the building. So there is precedent on this committee for approving illuminated signage.
Thank you,
Thank you
Daughtry.
for that, Dorothy. I think I remember that, but okay.
Yes, yeah.
Yes,
I
on
remember it
Emmanuel
too.
Baptist.
Yes.
Oh, wow. So the president is already.
Okay, Esther, who's the person that wants to,
Miss
from Clinton Hill?
Rosaria, she has her hand
Oh, I
up.
see. Okay, I
Rosaria-
see. I see. Yes, I do see that one. I do see that person. Rosario. Okay, Rosario
me?
Sinisi. Yes, I'll give you. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I'm the president of Citizens for Responsible Neighborhood Planning of Clinton Hill and Fort Greene, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak. There were a number of letters to the Land Use Committee, and this is just a summary of the concerns voiced by the community. First, the New York City zoning resolution prohibits illuminated signs on the premises of community use facilities in residential districts. It categorizes houses of worship as community use facilities, and applicant's property is located in an R6 residential district. LPC's signage regulations state that it presupposes that an application submitted to LPC is as of right under the zoning regulation. This one apparently is not. The zoning resolution also specifies what information can be presented in such a sign, with which this application does not comply. In terms of the LPC application requirements, the application lacks materials required by LPC detailing design elements of the proposed sign, such as typeface, color swatches, etc. The reason that these elements cannot be submitted is that a digital sign with a constantly changing or swiping display would replace images as it is programmed at future dates, which basically leaves the content at the discretion of the applicant. Finally, the proposal is for a 21st century sign installed without a permit in 2005. The fact that nobody has objected only indicates that people concerned with historic district regulation assume that it was actually there in 1981, depending on their age. That doesn't make it legal. So actually, we recommend that the Land Use Committee disapprove the application and hope that the applicant will take the opportunity to propose a different sign in keeping with the zoning resolution and LPC's requirements and the context of the Clinton Hill Historic District. We submitted photos to the committee along with our letter of other signs on houses of worship in the Historic District that appear to be in compliance with the zoning resolution and the LPC's requirements. And we hope that these will be of assistance to the applicant. The one
Time, I'll have
freestanding
to
sign.
stop you there. Okay, we got you. I have to stop because it got you 2 minutes. We got to keep moving. But thank you, Mr. Zanisi. All right, I think we've had a discussion on this one. We have a lot to do. I'd like to have a motion.
I can make
one way or the other.
I can make a motion to disapprove the application as presented.
I second the motion, Carlton.
Okay, we have a motion to disapprove. Okay, so if we vote in favor of the motion, it is to disapprove. Are there any comments or questions on the motion?
I'd like to make a friendly amendment to ask that the applicants read the information provided by Ms. Zanisi and the Citizens for Responsible Planning, and to meet with Landmarks to come up with a good solution.
I accept the friendly motion. I think in reality, the Landmarks staff don't really help applicants design. They might give advice if they haven't already, but I think they might get more help from the Clinton Hill committee that's offered to help them. They might be better. They might get more feedback that way, but I don't. I'm not
The
sure.
amendment has been accepted and the motion is on the floor to disapprove. Any further comments or questions on the motion?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm a bit unclear on, I'm looking, I mean, in the minutes for the meeting from April, there appeared to be almost no conversation on the similar proposal, or a proposal to replace wooden signs with LED signs for Emmanuel Baptist Church. And so, does anybody remember why why that was approved so swiftly? And we're fairly cool to this one?
I think I voted against. I don't think we were.
Okay, you go ahead, Judy, then.
I think I'm pretty sure I voted against it. I would have if I'd been at that meeting, but I bet you we didn't know what we were doing and weren't aware of the regulations when we voted. That does sometimes happen.
I don't think that's true, but I'm gonna say that we shouldn't be, especially in a public meeting, in a public hearing, talking about how we can't remember what we voted for. So I'm gonna ask us to move on from this and to look at the
I just say
signage.
that we tried, I think we went through a number of things. That was a long one also. I do remember it was a long one, and we eventually wound up accepting it. That's all I can really tell you, Brian. Sorry.
Mr. Chair, can we just close the question?
Okay, we have a call for the question. Again, I see Miss Murray's hand is up, but it's if you want, we did the comments on that one. If you want to stay for the community forum, you're welcome to. Okay, it's been so called. We have a motion to disapprove. We'll take the roll call right now.
Just to remind, there's been a friendly amendment that's been accepted. So it's a motion
Right,
to
with the
disapprove with the
amendment.
amendment.
With amendment, that's correct. And if you say yes, it is a motion. You are saying yes to the disapproval.
I understand that.
Okay, go ahead. Whoever has a roll.
Ernie Augustus, Ernie, always first.
Yes, to disapprove?
Yes. Esther Blount,
Yes.
Patricia Staffen,
Yes.
John Doe,
Abstain because of consistency.
okay. Bill Flanoy,
Yes.
Alton Gordon,
Yes.
Brian Howell,
I'm going to abstain for the same reason as Mr. Dew.
Irene Janner,
Yes.
Keith Stanton.
Yes.
And we have 702, motion to disapprove.
All right, so I'll just tell the church at this time to do consult with the Clinton Hill group. If you can get anything out of LPC also, that would be most helpful. And see if you can make a better set, because we're not against signs for the church, but we are concerned about this one at this time. Sorry, but thank you. Next one is 141 Gates Avenue, also in the Clinton Hill Historic District, which happens to be a few blocks from the Brown Memorial Church.
Yes, hi, thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, can hear you. Go ahead.
All right. So my name is Mike House. I am a sole practitioner architect hired by the current owners of this two-family townhouse at 141 Gates Ave. And our project consists mostly of interior alterations. However, we have some minor work occurring at the rear facade of the building, which is what I would like to focus on for this presentation. As you mentioned, and as you can see here, this home is located in the Clinton Hill Historic District. And we have the 1940s original tax photo here and a current photo of the front facade as it exists today. While the work on the front facade is limited, nothing is happening to the front facade other than these 6 windows are being replaced, and they are being replaced to essentially match previously approved window replacements that occurred about 5 to 7 years ago at the ground floor and parlor floor. The reason that the landmarks preservationists that we're working with asked that we come to the community board and then eventually to the full commission is because of what we are proposing on the rear facade. So you know what, maybe before I show you this block diagram, I'll skip ahead a bit and give you kind of big picture view of what we're trying to do. So this is the existing rear elevation of 141 Gates. It's drawn like this to show the fenestration and the window pattern in relation to the other buildings, to its surrounding context. And this is the proposed rear elevation. And I will get into this in a little bit more in a minute here, but I just want to reiterate that there's no change in bulk as part of this application. What we're proposing is taking these 3 window openings and enlarging them to create basically patio doors that lead from the parlor floor to a new steel balcony and attached stair. And this is a side-by-side existing and proposed plan view. So you can see this is the existing rear facade, 3 windows. The dashed lines here indicate portion of the facade that we are proposing to remove. And then here are the new window wall and patio doors. This goes out onto a new non-combustible steel deck with an open grate floor system that allows light to get down to the garden below, a painted black steel picket rail that's very commonly seen in this neighborhood as for fall protection, and an open riser steel stair down to the rear yard. This is existing building section and proposed building section, showing the new deck and new associated stair. And this is a blown up elevation and some details showing the new door system. So this is essentially a narrow sightline steel window system. So something that that is commonly seen in the neighborhood. And we think historically appropriate in terms of the window detailing. This is a precedent of a neighboring project that's 1 block over at 122 Gates Avenue. And we used the approved landmarks presentation as a sort of baseline when we were comparing what we wanted to do versus what we thought the community board and later on the commissioners would approve. And so this slide is just here to give you some context. This project at 122 Gates has a similar situation where, yes, while this is a non-primary facade, there is a view from a side street. In this case, it was from Cambridge Place that has a very clear view of the rear facade. And we have a similar situation. So this is, in our case, you can see the rear facade from Grand Avenue, and Gates is over here, right, at the front of the building. So this is the existing view from Grand Avenue, and this photo is taken with high foliage. So we're just indicating where the building outline currently exists. And this is a Photoshop mock-up and a rendering of the proposed view from Grand Avenue. Here's our new fenestration at the parlor level, patio doors, deck, and you see a little bit of the stair kind of coming down before it disappears behind the gate here. This is the existing rear facade. And this is the proposed rear facade. So again, no change in bulk, new fenestration, picket rail, painted steel gate, open web steel grate floor system, and an open riser steel stair with matching picket rails for the handrails. And quickly, I just would like to show you this block diagram. And the purpose of this diagram is to give you some context in terms of neighborhood fabric and sort of similar context in the houses around our project. So our project is at 141 Gates here. So the green here is all of the two-story existing, some existing and some built more recently additions. And the yellow are other decks that have been previously approved on our block. And then I'm also showing the neighboring block with the 122 Gates project that is a similar situation to ours, and you can see it from here at Cambridge. And again, a diagram just showing various other decks and some existing and some new two-story rear yard additions. And this is essentially just a three-dimensional diagram of that same block front plan. And this is our building here. The green is existing rear yard addition. The yellow is our proposed deck.
Your building's one with the
That's
little
pretty much
yellow
it.
thing. Yeah,
What's that?
okay. I was saying your building's the one with the little yellow.
Yeah, this is us here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's you. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, any comments or questions from board members, committee members?
Motion to approve as presented, if I may.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it. Bill Flournoy.
Bill
Mr.
seconded?
Yes. Bill
Okay.
Flournoy seconded.
Any-
Mr. Gordon, I just want to say also that the Society
Yes.
for Responsible Neighbor, anyway, the Clinton Hill looked at this and they had no objections.
That's
The Clinton Hill
wonderful.
Committee. Huh? Excuse me?
That's wonderful to know.
Okay.
Okay, motions to approve has been seconded. If there are any other comments, let's have a roll call.
Ernie Augustus,
Yes.
Esther Blount,
Yes.
Audrey Christopher,
Yes.
Undo,
Yes.
Bill Flournoy,
Yes, indeed.
Carlton Gordon,
Yes,
Brian Howell,
Yes.
Irene Janner. While Irene unmutes, Judy Stanton,
Yes.
Irene. Okay,
well, we
without
have
Irene.
8. So I think the motion passes anyway. When Irene gets to us, we'll add her vote. And I'll just say that house is a perfect name for an architect. I had to put that.
Yes, I was born for the job. Yes.
Born to build. Thank you. Okay,
Oh, it's
Irene, I
Irene.
think
Thank you very much.
Am I on
Thank you
now?
for your time.
Yes,
your favor, Irene?
yes.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
All right,
Irene.
so, Irene, so we have a 9-0 in favor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next application is, now we're jumping over to Brooklyn Heights, 165 Henry Street in the Heights Historic District. I was noticing this is the multiple dwelling. I think this is right across from what used to be Gristides. I don't know if it's still, I think it's no longer Gristides.
It is.
It's a CVS and directly across.
Give me that.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, hey, good evening, everyone. Let me introduce myself. I'm Nate Shelkoff, and I'm from the Brownstone Door Company. I'm going to try to do this in 5 minutes, okay? So our company specializes in the fabrication of historically significant entryways in New York City. Our website is brownstonedoors.nyc if you'd like to see the type of projects we take on. As part of our design work, we conduct extensive historical and on-site research. I'm a bit of a door historian myself. Also, we consult with New York City tax photos, 19th century door catalogs, books, and other relevant newspaper articles. So the site is 155 Henry Street, and it's an apartment building that was built in 1928. It was designed by Mortimer E. Freehoff, who was an architect of a number of apartment buildings in the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. Our firm has been contracted by the co-op board to replace the existing double leaf doors and transom. The existing awning and the frame are to remain. As part of this scope of work, the board has requested that we remove the existing spindles from the transom. We've already submitted our proposal to LPC, which has approved our door design, but they would not grant us permission at a staff level to remove the spindles and recommended that we propose at a public hearing. So here we are. Our goals were to increase the functionality of the entryway, bring in a little more light into the interior, and overall streamline the look of the entryway and respect the character of the building. So as I mentioned, the co-op would like us to remove these transom spindles, which is a highly unusual element. You usually see that on stairs, not transoms. So we have some historical photos we'd like to share with you. The first one is the only historical photo from 1940s tax photo, which doesn't reveal much. Next slide, we can see the entrance in its current condition with the transom with the spindles, the transom sash, the door frame, existing mutton profile, and masonry surround. So to restate, our scope is to replace the doors and transom sash, reducing the number of lights, and also try to remove these spindles from the transom. In the next slide, we see detailed drawings of the current entryway, which shows the spindles, which would be removed, and the doors would be replaced with modified panes. This is our proposed door entry section and the details that go with it. As you see, the transom and doors are to be fabricated from white oak stiles and rails, and the glass would be tempered insulated units, which would improve the energy efficiency of the building. The finish would be stained, very similar to what it is right now. We'd like to show you a comparison to some other residential buildings in Brooklyn Heights. So here you can see how the existing view is at 155 Henry Street. And for comparison, we have some other neighborhood entryways that show transoms with single lights and transoms with divided lights, all without spindles. You can see here at the entryways at 2430 Clinton Street and 35 Pierpont, which are both historic in the Brooklyn Heights Historic District that were designed by Mortimer E. Freehoff, the same architect as Henry Street. They both have a single light transom, no spindles. So far as we can tell, no other building in Brooklyn Heights has any spindles in a transom. For examples of divided light transoms without spindles, we have 55 Pineapple Street, 65 Montague, and 75 Montague. These three entryways all showcase a variety of styles to divide transoms. So we think our design fits really well within the character represented by these entryways. So we demonstrated that transom spindles at 155 Henry are not a historically significant feature. They don't contribute to the historical character of the surroundings. They're highly irregular and they obscure the transom. We're also referencing an article from the Brooklyn Eagle in 1927 that notes the construction of 155 Henry Street in a rather negative light. It was noteworthy for its not architectural significance, but for its amenities. And they called the developers wreckers because they were demolishing the neighborhood's frame houses and mansions. Also, Lancaster's authoritative history of the Heights fails to mention 155 Henry as a significant piece of architecture. So to conclude, the design selected by our clients is a clean, highly functional design that keeps with the other apartment buildings in the neighborhood. That's it.
Thank you very much. Okay, Irene, Judy Stanton, what does you folks think?
Well, our committee is trying to dig up some more historical information about this building, and our committee chair is an historian who's actually writing a book on the Brooklyn Heights Historic District, and found a newspaper article from the same day as the one that we're seeing that has a sketch, an architect's sketch of the building before it was constructed, and it does not appear to show spindle. So that would be worth the applicant looking into. We're kind of puzzled as to why the LPC, if this is going to a hearing, just because spindles are being removed and the staff doesn't feel they can prove that, on what basis are they hesitating? Unless they have information that they're not sharing with the applicant, what was originally there, it doesn't appear to us that they're original, but I guess what it boils down to is there are other tax photos that probably should have taken the trouble to produce. There's a 1960s designation photo, which we're not seeing. And there's a 1980 photo, which we're also not seeing. And when you go online to look for these things, so they need to be printed out to get a better view. So it's possible there weren't transcripts there, but if the LPC staff is attaching much importance to them, then I think we need a little more documentation.
Okay, I'll go in order of, I see hands raised, so I'll go in order of my screen. The next one on my screen is Bill Flournoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, my feeling basically is if this is such a unique item as far as design, and it's something that we don't see anywhere else, I think that in itself may lend to the fact that they don't want to remove it because it is something that's unique to the district. And the fact that we don't know if it was there before or after, okay, to remove it without actually having the knowledge of it being there prior, you just gave us an image of the historic photo and you couldn't see anything. So we don't know if it was already existing or not existing. And I think that to remove it would be premature before we have additional information. So my feeling basically is the same as LPC's to leave it there for right now until we have additional information.
Okay, the next person I see hands up on my screen is John Doe.
Yes, Daughtry made a motion to approve. Esther seconded it. And nobody in this call was there 100 years ago when the spindles were there or not there. And so since the general sense is that they can be removed without creating that much of a difference in the feel of the historic district, that's all. I think we should call the question after Mr. Gordon, you finish calling on the speakers.
I didn't hear the motion. I'm sorry. Was there a motion?
Yes, there was a motion made.
They put the motion in the chat. They didn't
Oh,
actually do a verbal, they did it in the chat.
I'm sorry.
But
So
I
there's a
called it
motion
out.
to approve in the chat. Okay, I didn't see it.
I called
All
it
right,
out.
so
Daughtry made the motion, Ms. Blount seconded.
it's a motion to approve, right? Very well. We have a motion to approve and a
It was
seconded.
to approve. Yes, it was to approve.
All right. Are there any other comments or questions on that motion? Okay, so it's a motion straight to approve the application. Okay, go ahead with the roll call.
Ernest Augustus,
I'm going to abstain.
you were ready this time. Ms. Blount,
Approve.
Ms. Gustafson,
Yes.
Mr. Du,
Yes,
Mr. Flournoy,
No,
Mr. Gordon,
Yes.
Mr. Howell,
Yes.
Ms. Janner, Ms. Stanton,
Abstain?
I vote no.
I
okay,
have 5 yes, 2 no, 2 abstention. Motion passes barely. There you got it.
What was Irene's vote?
Yes,
Irene said no.
oh,
He abstained.
yes, I have
Sorry,
5.
everybody but Irene, please be quiet. I cannot hear. Irene, what was your vote?
Am I on now?
Yes.
You're
Okay,
on now,
I
Adjourn.
abstained.
Thank you.
So that makes it 5 yes, 2 no's, 2 abstentions. Motion passes. Next one is also in Brooklyn Heights, 36 Remsen Street.
Thank you very much, everybody. We will try to also keep it as quick and brief as possible.
Thank you.
Screen mode. All right. So the project we're presenting is 36 Remsen Street, located within the Brooklyn Heights Historic District, where this red circle is right here. The 36 Remsen was built in the mid 1840s, along with a sister building at 34 Remsen Street. The building is being converted back into a single family residence, and a bulk of the work is restoration and preservation. But there are some components that are visible from, so it's a block that goes through to Grace Court, and because Grace Court is a garden, there's some visibility of the rear facade and of the bulk and the proposed bulkhead. So none of the proposed work is visible from Remsen Street, but we'll go through the work that is visible from Grace Court and present that to you. Cass, do you want to go from here?
Sure. Hi, this is Cass Stackelberg from Higgins Quays Barth and Partners Preservation Consultants, and I will try and be brief. The photo on the left is the street facade. All the work on this street frontage is all restorative. So we're just showing you the front of the building, but the staff at Landmarks is working with us on all the scope there. The photo on the right is the back of the building standing in the rear of the lot, which, as Damien said, backs up to Grace Court. So there's some visibility through a gate. A fence, I should say, along Grace Court. And you can see that the building has a two-story bay window at the parlor and second floor, wood trim, which is in need of repair, and painted brick masonry. Next slide. Two tax photos of 36 on the left and 34 Remsen, both constructed in the mid 1840s. Mansard floors were added in the later half of the 19th century, and we're using these photos as a guide for the restoration work on the front facade. Next slide. Some historic maps that just show on the left the earliest map we have from 1855, and then the later map showing that the extensions were actually built at the back of 34 and 36 later in the 19th century, and then the current tax map on the far right. Next slide. Some historic images along the back, along Grace Court. So again, you can see the visibility over these long rear yards, over and through the fence of the back of buildings, and you can see and get a sense of the variety of roof lines that existed. There are a few buildings that were built like 34 and 36 as part of rows, but this is not a consistent row as you might see in some other parts of the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. Next slide. An aerial view on the left, just illustrating where the building is. And also, if you zoom in on this, you can see that there are a number of other rooftop features on the buildings on this side of Remsen Street, particularly rooftop bulkheads. And part of the application that we're proposing is the construction of a visible stair bulkhead that will allow the occupants of the building to actually get onto the roof. And then you can see the rear yard extension off the back of the building, and then the large rear yard extending out to Grace Court. And then the photo on the right, again, all the way back in the rear portion of the yard, again, pointing to the back of 36 Remsen. Next slide. Detailed photos illustrating the conditions at the back. There are wood double hung windows and wood cladding around these bay windows, which are in need of repair. As part of the project, all the window air conditioners and through wall air conditioners on the front facade are going to be removed and the various elements restored. The photo on the lower right is a window at the basement level beneath the bay window, and we're proposing to enlarge that to allow for easy access from the basement level out into the rear yard. You'll see more of that in just a moment. There's a side yard, a very narrow side yard between the extension at 36 and 34, and these are some existing images within that yard, a projecting bay window, which will be, again, restored and retained. Next slide. Photos of the back of the house, and I'll just point to the middle photo in particular. The window at the bottom of that photograph is at the parlor level, and there's a through wall unit, air conditioning unit that's been cut into the brick masonry. I'll also just point out that that window like other windows on the rear elevation and side elevations, actually are misaligned from those above, which is an interesting feature, but perhaps not in terms of the architecture of the building, not much to look at. Next slide. Some photographs from the upper roof looking down to the roof of the extension. There's a dumbwaiter shaft that was added to the rear yard extension with a skylight over that dumbwaiter shaft. Those elements will be retained as part of the project, and a fireplace flues that extend up, and that flue will be replaced in a more secure manner. Next slide. And then the upper roof of the house itself, looking both toward Remsen and to the rear yard. I'll just point out in the upper right corner of the right photograph, there's a bulkhead element right at the back of the parapet that's on the neighboring building at 34 Remsen Street, and that too is visible currently from Grace Court, from across the rear yards. Next slide. We've collected some images from around the district, just illustrating the types of visible rooftop features that exist. Typically stair bulkheads, small enclosures, things like that, consistent with what we're proposing as part of this project. Next slide. And then a few more views on this slide as well. Next. Some details of the front facade. Again, through all units will be removed. Various elements will be restored as part of the overall scope of work. Next slide. And then this historic fence that runs along the back of the property. This is, of course, going to be retained, and the fence and the cast iron posts will all be restored as part of the overall project. Next slide.
I think this slide's also just helpful to give a perspective on this is your view, and that side yard is very narrow within that view. So I'll take it from here. So just quickly run through the elevations of the building. This is existing on the left and proposed on the right. I apologize, I never introduced myself. I'm Damien Zanino from Studio DB. I'm the architect on the project. But yes, the image on the elevation on the left is existing. The elevation on the right is the proposed. Most of the work on the front facade is entirely restorative. You can see the bulkhead proposed at the top, which is not visible in any way from Remsen Street. Nor is the railing that we're proposing behind the cresting. On the rear facade, we are proposing to convert this misaligned window into a door, and that is part of the scope that Landmarks has asked us to present to you, and proposing to enlarge this opening, which is this current window here, underneath the bay window into a door system, as Cass mentioned. And then there's on the roof, there's a screening for mechanical equipment and the stair bulkhead beyond that. So there's some details of the proposed windows, finishes. This is the door underneath the bay window on the rear facade. This is the door from the underneath the parlor level on the basement level within the side yard. Again, it's sort of a window where there's an air conditioning unit that we're converting into a door. And then at the parlor level, doing the same thing. This is that misaligned window that Cass pointed out that we're going to convert into a door as well. We're proposing to convert to a door. These are side yard elevations. This is a view you never really get because the side yard is only less than 8 feet wide. But the scope of work that Landmarks has asked us to present to you is that these two windows here, we would like to widen them so that there's more space between them, which is the benefit of the layout of the interior. And then to convert these two existing windows underneath the existing lintels, but to convert them to doors.
Did you cursor over the windows? I was just
sorry.
I don't know if you can. Yeah.
These are the two windows that we would like to convert to doors. So they're within the existing the headers, the lintels remain in place.
All right.
I'm sorry, I had a question about those windows.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to do that, Carlton?
Daughtry, go ahead. Go ahead, Daughtry.
It looks like from the existing to proposed that in the existing they're aligned, but in the proposed they're no longer aligned. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's why we're being asked to present them to you.
And again, this is from the side yard that you really won't see because it's 8 feet wide.
That's correct. It's 8 feet wide and 40 feet deep, and on 100 feet from Grace Court. So to the start of it. So it really is a very minimal, if any, if there's a minimal view in the winter at a very specific spot. But I can go. I'll go through the plans really quickly.
Can I see a site map of the location of the building?
Yes. Sorry. I guess if this works, yeah. So this is everything we're talking about is visibility from Grace Court only. The fence is along here, and then this is this facade that we're talking about, where the side yard, where we're proposing to widen the spacing between the windows.
How far away from that is from the corner or from Henry Street?
There's a huge building right here, so none of this is visible in any way.
This is maybe mid block.
Yeah.
Mid block. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it's a long way from Henry.
Yeah.
No, I attend Grace Church. That's why I asked.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So here's better.
Maybe if you want to zoom in on that a little bit, Damien, we might be able to determine where we are. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. I got it.
It's this lot here.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, that's not visible at all. Okay.
Sorry.
Anything else you want to point out?
I do. My computer is not going as fast as it's tired too. Sorry.
All right. Well, in the meanwhile, let me first go to Judy Stanton or Irene.
I do want to show you just the views from we have perspectives from, I'll skip through the plans because they just show those layouts. But here, well, let me start. The roof plan. So the bulkhead, which is not visible from Remsen Street, but is visible from Grace Court. And then the screening of the mechanical are the two elements that are visible from Grace Court. Existing site section, and then proposed site section. So the top approximately 6 feet of the bulkhead and 3 feet of the screening is visible from the far side of Grace Court. So here are just some views from Remsen Street. Nothing is visible. This is with the mock-up in place. This view on the left is with the mock-up in place, and then proposed finishes. I'm just going to zoom in here quickly. So you can see this is the bulkhead that Cass had pointed out on 34 Remsen Street that's up tight to the parapet. This is our proposed screening for the mechanical and the proposed bulkhead for roof access and beyond it. Just another view off of Grace Court. Again, sort of giving, you're basically just seeing the screening with a small sliver of the bulkhead behind, and then that's the bulkhead on the neighboring building also visible. So very similar kind of massing, visibility, exposure. And this is just some views from the roof of the mock-up in place. That's our presentation.
Thank you. Okay. Because I'll go with Judy Stanton and Irene first, and then I'll go over to John Dew. Judy, Irene.
I thought you called on me.
Either one of you.
Okay. These are just small questions. I'm missing some information on the materials and finish that you're proposing. Can we just assume the frames will be black?
The frames will be black. For the doors on the side yard, we're proposing a steel finish, and for the doors, there'll be a black clad aluminum finish on wood doors. But everything will be black.
Side, so the metal finish, is that going to be painted black?
It'll be black. It'll be powder coated black. Yes. So, sorry. Existing painted finish.
On the brick facade in the rear, are you going to be stripping? Will that be repainted?
It's something we're still exploring. We're going to do some tests to see the condition of the brick.
All right, just, I don't know. Okay, I think that's it. That's it on my,
Okay, John Doe.
I didn't have any questions, but I do have a comment, Mr. Gordon, which is that we had agreed a while back, and maybe it doesn't apply to this particular application, that we did not want to waste a lot of time looking at applications that could not be seen from the public realm. Anyone who wishes to opine can go to the Landmarks Commission. That's all.
Okay, but all right, on this one, he said it can be seen from Grace
Yeah.
Court, which is a
Only in the
important
winter
thoroughfare.
time.
Yeah,
It can be clearly seen, John.
all right, any other comments or questions? If not, can we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Bill Flitwick.
Thank
Second,
you,
John Doe seconds.
thank you. Any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none, let's have a roll call.
Okay, Ernie Augustus,
Yes.
Esther Blount,
Yes.
Patricia Stefan,
Yes.
John Doe,
Yes.
Bill Flournoy,
Yes.
Carlton Gordon,
Yes.
Brian Howell,
Yes.
Irene Janner,
Yes.
and Judy Stanton.
yes.
And that's
Unanimous?
unanimous.
9-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
everyone.
all. Thanks very
Thank
much.
you. Okay. You have another one, also in Brooklyn Heights, 123 Joralemon Street.
Hi, how are you? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Perfect. Hi, I'm Michael Ingwe from Bax Ingwe Architects. Here with a few of my associates, and we are presenting 123 Joralemon Street, which is in the Brooklyn Heights Historic District on Joralemon Street between Clinton and Henry Street. You can see the house here. It's behind a tree, but you can see it. We've got better pictures in a second. Next to another building that's about 4 stories tall with a bunch of dormers, and another house here, or a building here that's 7 stories tall. A few different pictures from the side. The elevations that we have drawn show it a little bit better. You'll see them in a second. We've taken some photos, mostly of the front. We're showing you the whole project, but nothing in the back can be seen from a public way. And you can start to see the building. You know, just to come back to history, you see this small house that's here. This is what was built in the late 1950s. And this is what was on the property. And we think sometime in the 80s or 90s, Joseph Stella built this. He did it as an alteration type 2, not type 1, for a new building. And it since has been worked on again after that by another architect that we're aware of. So it's not an old building. So we can find a lot of the brick and some of the other elements. Here's a rendering showing some of the scope. We're keeping the facade intact. We'll be putting brand new simulated double hungs in. This will be a passive house. We're restoring and creating a new wood garage door. These will all be wood black painted windows. The brick is actually in good shape. We are installing new dormers on the front. If I go back to the existing, you can see that right now it's a flat roof, or a flat mansard, I should say, without dormers. And we have these in drawn elevations, so you can see it even clearer. And we've actually spent quite a bit of time on these. We've already met with the Brooklyn Heights Association and our preservationists. And as of today, we've actually brought these down in scale. Both of them have asked us to do this. These were a little bit larger. We've played with a whole bunch of different shapes, but we've brought them down in scale and created a flat topped windows. We were playing with the arch top windows here as well, and I think it calls too much attention. So this is the result of a meeting with the Brooklyn Heights Association and our preservationists. We're also extending the parapet up a bit higher, and we're extending the building out. It's hard to see here. You'll see it much better in some of the coming elevations. So again, we're extending this floor back, extending the brick up a little bit, and the same here. It's hard to see because you can only kind of see it through an alley, but in our side elevations, you can really see it. Just some better images of that front facade without the leaves. You can see the two dormers. We've rendered them in a little bit more detail. The detail on the house is very simple right now. We're basically mimicking that detail and keeping it simple. We're fixing a few things right now. The asphalt roof shingles just come right to the edge right here, right to this edge, and we're to a piece of plywood that's painted black, literally. So what we're doing is we're actually replacing it with bluestone coming down, I think the way it would have been done, and having new EcoStar tiles come through it. The EcoStar tiles, what we use on a lot of our landmark projects, they look exactly like slate, but they're recycled rubber. Here's a front elevation showing that. You can also start to see the next piece to talk about, which is the bulkhead. You can start to see that. Actually, I'll keep going because you see that in some of the other windows that I'm going to show you. So here's some examples of some mansards with dormers. Some more. There's a bunch of precedent in the neighborhood. But when we get into the bulkhead, you can start to see it from the front. This is that front parapet that we've extended up about 36 inches to hide a roof deck. And you've got the bulkhead, which will be a standing seam. You can't see any of this part of the bulkhead or minimally see it from the street, but you definitely can see this. And we'll show you that in a second. Here it is from the roof. We've kept it as low as possible. This is a 6'8" door. It does have glass in the back. This gives you a sense of what it looks like in plan. You've got the front of the building with the two dormers we were describing just now. Roof deck. We've brought the rail back from here to here so it's not visible. And nothing I'm about to show you in the back is visible from a public way. Some more details on that dormer. Some of the materials we're using. Anywhere we're extending brick, we can get the existing brick. Glengarry sells this brick so we can match it perfectly. Here's a view of the rear facade, showing that what is the bulkhead extending down. And you can see what was there. So the back of the house already had a lot of glass. It already had a lot of glass in this area, as well as on the third floor. We're just extending it further back. Some existing elevations, some plans that describe what I'm showing. This entire mass existed. There was already a bit of a glass roof on this originally. The cellar already existed. And what we are doing is we are adding the second floor and third floor in this area. The second floor stops here. The third floor doesn't exist back here. The third floor actually I'll annotate because I think that'll be clearest. That is the addition on the third floor. And that is the addition on the second floor. So the second floor did exist, where I'm going to highlight in orange. So that's all original. And the third floor existed here. So we're extending back, we're extending back these two levels. Just some more details. Some building sections showing how we're doing it. This is the original or existing mansard. This is the dormer, keeping it as low as possible, but still so someone can walk there. Some closer details of some of the windows. And I think this shows the extension the best. Here's the side elevation. So here's that third floor. You can see the extension of the third floor plus the parapet. And here's the existing other side. And here you can see the extension of the parapet. This portion is pushed back. See, that's not on the side wall. This is pushed back about 10 feet. So the side wall is being extended here. Although we're showing it in two different colors, we can match the brick perfectly. You will not see this, and we'll point the whole wall so that all the mortar matches.
The new brick will reflect the old.
I'm sorry?
The new brick is going to be like the old brick.
Yeah, we can match it perfectly. We've already found it, and just some more sections. So that's the project as a whole. I'll try to stop on a slide that kind of depicts it the best.
While you do that, Michael, can you just confirm what is visible from the street besides obviously the street front dormer windows?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so right here, I think this shows it the best. I use red. You can see that you can see a bit of the bulkhead. Thanks. Sorry, there. And we're adding the brick here. We're adding the to the parapet. That parapet does help to hide that bulkhead. That's one of the reasons we're doing it. We could have done an open rail here. In fact, the preservationists are still kind of talking to us about that, but we feel like it highlights the bulkhead more than we wanted to, and shows a roof deck where we weren't really excited about showing a roof deck. And then here, what's visible is that, again, the extension of the brick. This is the parapet that we're extending. And I mean, it looks like it's an angle, but it's really not. And that's that third floor that we're extending. And that's what's visible.
Anything else, Daughtry? Okay, thank you. We have, I guess, Judy Stanton has her hand. Judy, Irene, what do you folks have?
Our committee has had quite a bit of interaction with the applicants. So Michael, I just wanted to ask, and thank you for putting the flat top on the windows within the dormers. Would you consider, Jeremy wanted to know the committee, well, you already saw his email, consider making them even smaller or maybe a single glazed?
Well, these have been brought down since our meeting. They've been brought down 10 inches. And then we've reduced you can't really see it very well here because it's just, I mean, they're really subtle changes. But so we brought it down 10 inches since our meeting in height, and we've made these side pieces a little narrower.
Okay, but you're still wedded to have them multi-pane rather than considering maybe a single glass amount of glass, but might make them even more secondary than they are?
I think it'd be tough. I have to say, honestly, and I'm not saying we would do this, but you know, the original design of this house, not great. The window that's here is 9 inches from the floor, and the head is 3 feet from the floor, and there's already bedrooms here. They rely on the, I don't know how they got this up approved, but they rely on these little small windows. These are really dark rooms, so it'd be, I mean, we could go back to it, but I think we've made them as small as we feel comfortable, and I feel like they're, at least from what we met, I think they're far enough away, and the top has been brought down so they have less of a mass. Getting rid of the arch top really let us bring that down a lot. So I mean, that was a good suggestion.
I was just asking if you would consider a single pane of glass rather than what's shown.
Oh, got it. Sorry, Judy. So you're actually recommending, instead of a double hung, single pane and single pane? I think I'll take a look at that. We would.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I totally misunderstood you, Judy.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve as presented.
Seconded.
Okay. We have a motion and second. Brian, that was you? Okay, thank you. Motion to approve and second. Any comments or questions on the motion? All right, hearing none, let's have a roll call.
Okay, Ernie Augustus,
Yes.
Esther Blount,
Yes.
Audrey Gustafson,
Yes.
John Doe,
Yes.
Flanoy,
Yes.
Carlton Gordon,
Yes.
Brian Howard,
Yes.
Irene Janner,
Yes.
Judy Stanton.
I'm gonna say yes and hope we can see the revised drawings, Michael.
Yep, we'll show.
All right,
Okay,
unanimously in favor, 9-0. Thank you very much. All right, we got through all the applications. Now we have to, I don't know how, we'll now do the fiscal year 23 statement of needs and budget priorities. I don't have anything to put on the table, but does anyone have any budget priorities they wish to discuss in the landmark land use area?
Just say the obvious, that we need more truly affordable housing.
All right, well, generally, yes, okay.
When does this have to be submitted by?
I have no idea. Carol? Or
the last
Kaya?
chance. This is the absolutely last chance for any comment before we have to get the survey out. We're already behind. Our submission date to DCP, Department of City Planning, should be October 30th. We're going to miss that date and have to go into November. So as a committee, this is our absolute last chance to make any comments to what we have submitted. If you allow,
Carolyn, do we have any submissions from the Landmarks Committee to date?
we do have some entries, but they were put in by individuals. So I'd like to have some sort of idea of the consensus for these items to be put in. So the process is going to be, we're going to take all the suggestions that the committees have decided they'd like to move forward and work on creating a survey, just like we did last year for the first time, and have people vote on them. Then we will have that vote laid out. We'll analyze it, Taya will crunch it, and then we'll present it at the next general board meeting for a final vote. Then the staff still has to create the statement for submission. So tonight is the absolute last moment that we can offer to take comment. We're out of time.
I'll throw this one on. I was gonna say, I'll throw this one on the table. I'd like to see more inspectors for both the Department of Housing Preservation and Development and the Department of Buildings, especially for HPD. I mean, yeah, this was my old bailiwick, but yes, the inspectors are really needed for both departments to really address a lot of the problems that we do get, that do come up in our area.
So Department of Buildings added inspectors over the last year. I'm not quite sure about HPD. I don't remember that from the budget
Then
consultation.
HPD, definitely HPD. They always need inspectors because people do have complaints about housing conditions. And a lot of times they're still waiting to get an HPD inspector out there. So then that's the one I'll really push right now is for HPD, more HPD inspectors.
Okay.
Okay, Carol Ann, I have a suggestion. I would like to add that there needs to be a study of downtown Brooklyn from the 2004 upzoning. I say this all the time, I'm just repeating it so they can get in and hopefully get addressed. We need to study the racial impacts on the upzoning of downtown Brooklyn. We need to study the racial impacts on everything that goes on, but clearly with downtown Brooklyn, as I said, if you look up, you see air rights and $2 million condos. And if you look down, you see food pantries and homeless. That needs to be studied. We have to get a handle on the policies that are being implemented. This speaks to what we were discussing earlier, that the housing that was built excluded the folk that were downtown who were displaced by this upzoning. We need the city to understand it and then take the appropriate measures to address it. We're now dealing with a whole host of homeless related type issues because of that upzoning.
Okay, so everything has to be stated in a specific way. So if you don't mind working with me on how we
And we don't
write
have to do it.
statement.
We don't have to do it tonight. I'll send you some language. We
So,
don't have to do it tonight.
Well, so we can say it's displacement, right? That's the problem. I
Yes,
just want
yes.
okay. So it's displacement and
I want a stronger word, but that displacement will do for now.
okay. This okay. So okay. Any other thoughts, suggestions?
Taya, can you just, that document that some of us have been working in, can you just put that link back in the chat so everybody knows where it is?
Yes.
If you have some thoughts, that's where it should go. But as our staff have said, we're out of time and it needs to be phrased in a very specific way. So if you have an opinion about this, I think you should take a look at that document. I don't think we're going to be able to talk through it tonight, right? So we have to do it on our own time.
But that time is between tonight and Friday morning.
I understand.
I'm sorry if I keep stressing that.
Okay.
I understood.
All right. Thank you very much. I think we can, we'll do our best, and hopefully the ideas can bear some fruit.
Gordon, can I make a suggestion?
Oh, yes, go ahead. I'm just about
Okay, if anyone wants to add anything to the document, they should do it either today or tomorrow so we can finalize it by Friday. Okay, so, because we have to put language in there. If anyone has any ideas, they should do it now.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Can I follow up to that point?
Yeah, go ahead.
And sorry, because I have totally neglected filling this in. It's a question for Caroline and Taya. I see the problems, I see locations. How much of the row should we fill out if we are to put things into this document? Like what is for like the person who's inputting it to put in and what is to be like considered by the full board in deliberation?
So people who are entering suggestions, clearly state the problem as clearly as you can. We'll wordsmith it, but you need to state it as a problem. If it impacts a specific geographic location, please state that. And you can say the proposal and the result. It's not really necessary to have a target date. For people who put in dates, it can't be next month. It has to be past fiscal year 23. We're now in 22. And you don't need to know the cost. However, what can be really valuable is if you're able to give some context. So that will come under policy and history. If you can give context, it's really valuable for the agencies and potential collaborators. So, for instance, I know that the 8-4 and the 8-8 precinct have given me suggestions, what they'd like to have, right, in terms of equipment and personnel. So my collaborators will be the 84th precinct or the 88th precinct. So if you have a problem and there is a community organization that can, oh, I'm sorry, my video is off. And there's a community organization that can support that request, please add them to the sheet.
So Carol Ann, I wanted to throw this out as a potential land use issue because it could be transportation also. We have all this on the sidewalk parking from city agencies. The solution was going to be to install planters or bollards or whatever on those sidewalks after we provide those agencies with parking to get them off of the sidewalks. How can we express that desire just to get the thought process going on? Install planters on sidewalks where city agencies park on the sidewalk?
So I would probably actually phrase it like the need to improve safety and reduce congestion is the problem.
Fine, I'll take your lead on it. I just want to get it back in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And then I guess the other thing is the underground parking lot that was supposed to happen in Willoughby Plaza was taken out of the contract. And that underground parking lot was supposed to be partially to accommodate those agency vehicles where possible. So can we add underground parking or parking, I don't care where it is, for all of those same agency vehicle employees?
We can add anything. It just has to be a persuasive argument because the rest of the board is going to vote on it. So we should try to keep not the committee, but as a board, it's 40 requests, I believe. 25 expense and 15 capital. I don't know why I don't remember that specifically now. But it's 40 requests in all that when we submit it, they're really gonna look at. We can have more, but the further down the list it is, the less likely it is going to get agency attention.
Okay, well, let's put it at the bottom. If it goes at the bottom, over the years, it'll work its way up to the top. We've been dealing with this for 30 years now, so.
Okay, thank you. Let me move on. Let's move on to the chair report. I have a couple of items. I'm going to go through them quickly so we can finish up. Let's see, one thing we like to do, I'd like to ask we had the working group on the AMI. I'd like to see it get back moving in the next month or two. I know there are a couple of users there had started working it, then the virus really knocked a lot of communication out. I think since we're now talking to each other, I'd like to see the working group come back to life. And let's see if we can get some things we can bring to the board within the next month or two. So I'd like to get that moving. I'd like to see, one thing that's come up is this business for the ULEPs on the transit bonuses. It's something that we can keep in mind that as applicants come in, we can push to get them to apply for transit bonuses as part of the ULEP process, just so we can bear that in mind. And I think which is not all, what my final item is, which is not probably big news, is that, of course, we know that nationwide rents have been going up, which affects everybody. And that Dumbo has now become the highest rent market neighborhood in the city. And that's my chair's report. The next thing is other business.
And Mr. Gordon, Bill
Yeah.
Flanoy had done a very extensive AMI analysis for us many years ago. And
Yes.
so that is what I would expect we're working from. And there was a discussion of what was required, which was a cover letter to define what the community board wants to have. That was the end of what was required to finish off the AMI piece of it. The other piece of it was also done and approved by committee. And it was somehow shelved at the executive committee. That needs to be pulled out because we need a 197A for community board too. I don't know if that should be put down as a requirement, Carol Ann, but the 197A plan actually specifies what the community board's requests are for developers. It's a formal process that I've been asking us to go through so that when the developers look to submit an application, they already know in advance what our priorities are. We don't have that yet. We need to have that.
Can I just comment?
Mhm. Yes, go ahead.
No, I was
I
going to
just want to
say
add something. Yeah,
190
go ahead, Carol.
197A plans are great. It's a lot of work. It sort of creates a framework, but doesn't mean that anybody's gonna abide by it. It has no
Yeah, but we're not
heft.
saying anything
had
to
one.
anybody. We don't get any reaction. We get these ULURP applications. We see what's happened downtown Brooklyn. It's now spilling into Fort Greene and Clinton Hill and all over the place. We're getting all these high rises and we're getting nothing in place of it. How this transit bonus thing is supposed to work, it's not yet defined. But we should put it out there and get people thinking about it. And we should maybe submit something that says what we expect to have happen, because we have all this development that's going on down. We're getting no benefit for the community. And
One
so
more question. Who pays for the 197A?
We did a 197A process years ago for the waterfront. This is before Brooklyn Bridge Park. And it's extremely expensive, time consuming. You need a grant, you need somebody to pay for it. And then the city just shelves them. I think we just have to go straight to defining what we want and then have to badger our elected officials.
that's fine. We got new elected officials. We've all established a rapport at the very beginning before they take over to let them know what our priorities are. And I agree, Irene, we need to do a much better job of inviting both the elected officials and agency folks to the first 15 minutes of our community board committee meetings so that they could understand what's important for us.
Can I say something about new business? One day,
Yes, Esther.
one day we
Esther,
must
go ahead.
talk. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead, Esther.
One day we must talk about adjacent damage. I know everybody's got that little blur that Department of Buildings has something there to protect homeowners. They do not protect homeowners. They do not enforce it. It's too late now. It's 9:04. It's 9:45, but we got to talk about that. The other thing is this gift to developers, so they can have more density, and because they're going to promise for transit, ADA compliance, I think is terrible. I don't understand where my tax dollars is going. Why can't we give developers money to build schools now? We give them money now. We're going to give them money for transit. Why? We should be electing people that say, listen, we already got tax dollars for this. We don't need to give rich developers, not like this nonprofit, that's different. We don't need to give rich developers another gift. And you know what? Look at, sometimes when they say they're going to do it, and then they don't do it, what will be our recourse? Nothing. It's ridiculous.
Bingo, Esther. And we have to begin to sell your message. You're absolutely on point. After all these years, we have nothing to show, and we don't actually have any proof of the affordable housing that they claim to have provided. We don't know. We only know what we present in the application. There's no follow-up. How do we know what was converted to market rate after the approval? We don't know.
My suggestion, Esther, I think on the adjacent damages, because I know especially because you guys out in Clinton Hill really have, that's been a big problem there, although it's been in other parts of our district. If you guys can come up with something that maybe we can, talk to your people, talk to your neighbors, And maybe in the next month or two, if you can have something we can propose, an idea. I mean, I know I have a vague, I understand what to do it. I just, what I need now is like something that we can concretely put on the table and maybe send it up through the board and then to our government agencies to say, how do we deal with adjacent damage, especially of homes by people who are fixing their homes or their properties or their buildings. So that's maybe something if you want to work on, that'll be very nice.
Can I comment on that? Excuse me, may I comment on that? So actually, we were going to have a presentation from the Department of Buildings on adjacent construction tonight, but when I saw the heft of the agenda, I asked them to reschedule for November.
Excellent.
Hopefully.
As the, Rosario sent us
I'll still come up with questions, Esther.
documents. So that's on the drive. Folks can review what she sent because that will also help us have better questions for the Department of Buildings.
Okay, so hopefully November. We have a
Yes,
shot.
they should be on in November.
Okay.
And
All right.
Carol Ann, finally, there was a department that came up today in the Department of Transportation that I never heard of before. They do some kind of special projects. Can you get that department and what they do and send it out to the committee?
Well, Mr. Do you have to kind of tell me what the name of that department? I wasn't at that meeting with you.
No, it was today. They mentioned some of the department in DOT that does something special.
OCMC?
Is that what it is?
That's the only name I heard.
Okay, well, whatever it is, I don't know what that stands for and what they are responsible for.
Office of Construction Mitigation Management. So essentially what they do is for construction projects that will impact the sidewalk, their role is to ensure that there is safe passage, that congestion is reduced as much as possible, that sort of thing.
So we need them for State Street and St. Felix Street right now.
What's happening on State Street?
All this discussion we had earlier about what impacts the jail thing is going to have on State Street.
Well, okay, but like they said, that is probably only going to be one day on State Street.
I don't know what they said. He didn't sound assured. He did.
All right, let's community forum. I see one Ms. Sinisi. I don't know if you have anything you wish to add. We had to cut you off a little earlier. Nope.
Hi, can you hear me?
Pop away. Oh,
I just
okay,
wanted
there
to
you go.
say, I just wanted to say thank you very much for scheduling that for November. And the point that we've tried to make in the material that we sent is that DOB will make a presentation. We've met with DOB. We've had community meetings in Greenpoint and Williamsburg with DOB, and they typically send a liaison telling everybody that everything is great. And when we ask about why they don't enforce, the community liaison who showed up in Greenpoint said, and I think it was a direct quote, well, we rely on the good faith of the developer. And the audience burst into laughter. It was like 100 people. So that's probably what you guys are going to get. And it would be great to be able to have at least some community representatives who are familiar with this problem, across New York City, to be able to have some input too. I mean, maybe you schedule that for a later date and we can evaluate what was said in November and give you our input. That would be terrific.
Well, thank you. We'll try to hopefully pull all of it together.
Thanks.
So we'll come and we'll make, at least log on for our November meeting. Hopefully we'll be able to have questions for the Department of Buildings.
Okay, great. I'll tell
All
other
right.
people too.
Yes, okay.
I'm sorry, I have one more thing, which is that it seems like to me that so much of our public meetings are reactions to things that are put in front of us and that we never have the time to think ahead to plan ahead, to have real discussions, that we're not falling out of our chairs, to talk about what we want our district to be like in 5 years. My suggestion for this is that that we set up a meeting, an intermittent meeting time between land use monthly meetings, where whoever can get together and start to work on some of these issues that have been batted around for the last million years. AMI working group, I'm supposed to be working with Bill on that. We've had one conversation. That's all we have been able to do so far, but there's so much more to talk about. It's not going to happen in these meetings. It's freaking 10 o'clock and we're not even talking about the things we want to. So that's my suggestion.
We already covered that. We should start this discussion via email and ask everyone on the committee to react to it, and then we can consolidate and move forward from that point. But let's start the discussion with email. We've already done that a couple of times. And while we didn't come to conclusion, we weren't supposed to necessarily. We're discussing right now what that process is supposed to entail. So you're absolutely correct, but let's start it electronically, and then we can work, we can coordinate when we should actually have some kind of conference, some kind of Zoom meeting to firm it up, to present to the committee.
Okay, John, on the Economic Development and Employment Committee, we have working groups because you have to be very careful. We can't have the full committee or more than half of the committee having discussions outside of the public realm.
I
Okay,
got that.
Okay, so we have had working groups where we had 2 or 3 people working on a particular item. And once we have that item completed, we bring it to the committee to vote.
Fine.
Okay, so if you take a look at our district statement of needs, you'll see that we worked on that offline and then brought it to the committee. And we basically have filled it out in such a way where we could just basically hand it to the board office.
So Bill, can you share that with Irene and Daughtry? And then we can figure out what our next steps are and circulate who wants to be on the committee throughout the course of the next couple of weeks, hopefully, and get it moving.
Well, we're already on it. Daughtry's currently doing some background work on it. And once she finishes that, we can just knock it out in 3 seconds.
That'd be great.
I'm going
All right.
hold you to
I
that.
think we've hit we got our maximum motion to conclude tonight's meeting.
I'd like to say something on that.
Oh, yes, Brian, go ahead.
I mean, just the way that community boards are set up is that we are meant to be reactionary. You have, I mean, there are plenty of examples. I have friends on community boards, you know, in Queens and in the city. And the ones in the city, you know, they take a very proactive approach to, you know, what they want and what to ask from city agencies. And to be honest, city agencies mostly say, you know, you're not here to ask us for things. We're here to tell you when we may do something. So if we, what I thought was great about the AMI working group was, you know, the point is to come up with an idea, support the idea, convince elected officials to raise, you know, the profile of the idea. But I don't really think that there is, the city certainly isn't in the business of taking suggestions from community boards on most things. So when we think about what we should,
we are not going to be throwing the towel in. We have a new selection.
Not my point. My point is that we should think about the targets in order to inform our tactics, rather than saying, here are the things we want. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, Brian.
It's Irene. I think we have to go after the public officials because the city agencies are not geared to take our suggestions. They have to be pushed by the politicians who do the budgets. And with that, I think we should adjourn because I got to eat.
You know what? Irene's adjourn, and I'll second Irene's motion.
You were supposed to have a snack next to you while you were having this long meeting. Motion to adjourn?
Yes, we have it.
You're good.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.